Welcome to the Manhwa world. In the heart of a storm, where rain lashed against the windows like desperate fingers seeking entry, the night held a secret, a sorrow that gripped the Marquis Renard's mansion with icy fingers. It was the night Arabella, his beloved daughter, went missing without a trace. As lightning split the sky, illuminating the darkness with its jagged brilliance, Marquis Renard and his wife embarked on a relentless quest to find their missing child. Each passing hour felt like an eternity, each false hope a cruel twist of fate. Though everyone thought it wouldn't take long to find her, Arabella was never found. The news that Marquis and his wife were searching for their missing daughter spread far and wide like wildfire. But amidst the chaos and confusion, one truth remained unshakable: Arabella was gone, leaving behind a void that no amount of searching could fill. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, yet Arabella remained elusive, a ghost haunting the halls of her family's once vibrant home. And countless, Arabella, showed up at the manor, each claiming to be the lost daughter, but it was one disappointment after another. None could fill the void in the Marquis's heart. On a night much like the one Arabella had vanished, when her mother was sitting in her room, a figure appeared at the door, a beacon of hope amidst the darkness. Clad in a red dress, with innocence shining in her eyes, the girl entered and said, "It's time for dinner, mother." But as her mother's gaze fell upon her, a name escaped her lips, not Arabella, but Anita. She moved towards Anita. She kept her hand on Anita's face, and in that moment, the weight of grief and longing lifted, replaced by a bitter realization, and she said, "Anita, while you get to enjoy all these luxuries." She sniffled. "I can't even imagine what hardships my Arabella must be going through." Anita was looking at her mother with a grief in her eyes when her mother said, "You may leave now," with a single word. "Mother!" Anita's world shattered into a million fragments, as the slap of reality stung her soul. With the slap on her face, her mother shouted, "I told you to leave!" Anita squeezed her hands and turned. Her mother sobbed, "Arabella! My Arabella!" While Anita was taking each step back, she could hear her mother sobbing. "Everything Anita has should have been yours, Arabella." In the echoes of her mother's sobs, she found solace in the bitter realization that she was but a shadow cast by the absence of Arabella. Descending the staircase, each step was a silent testament to the unspoken tragedy of Anita's existence. After they lost Arabella, Marquis and her wife were forced to have another child to continue their lineage. While looking at the hanging picture of her parents, Anita thought to herself, "That child was me, Anita. I guess they couldn't bring themselves to love their second child they were forced to have, because they felt too guilty toward Arabella." Growing up in all these people who only thought about Arabella, Anita had heard so many harsh words for her. She heard a maid, holding a beautiful gown, talking to other. "If Lady Arabella were alive, she would have been able to wear dresses like this," the other replied. "She had her mother's silver hair, so this color would have suited her." Lady Anita, on the other hand. Anita, sitting in a garden, was thinking, "There was only one person who actually paid attention to me, Axion, Archduke Lacade's son's successor, my fiancé, and my only friend." Only Axion saw Anita for who she truly was, offering her solace amidst the storm of her existence. In his eyes she found refuge from the storm, a glimmer of light in the darkness that threatened to engulf her. "Whenever another fake Arabella came to the manor and distracted my parents, Axion would invite me to the Lacade manor. There, I could just be Anita, instead of the girl who stole everything that should have belonged to Arabella," Anita thought to herself. Reflecting on the miraculous day when Arabella returned unexpectedly, she said, "But one day, as if to reward my parents' efforts." Upon spotting their missing daughter, her parents were flinched, recoiled in disbelief, unable to trust their own sight. They dashed towards Arabella, yelling, "Arabella!" A young girl, dressed in tattered clothing, stood there in a state of disrepair. Arabella finally returned. She confirmed her identity through the imperial holy relic. Her parents were ecstatic, embraced each other with joy upon finally locating their daughter after extensive efforts. She was indeed the real Arabella Renard, She had been missing for 18 years. Upon finding her, her mother genially remarked, "My darling." Anita, who was watching her parents loving Arabella dearly on seeing her, thought, "I knew this day would come." Anita was observing the activity throughout the entire household as her father addressed the worker. "We need brighter colors." Her mother added her concerns. "She has had a rough life, so we must make her room bright and warm so she feels safe." A maid holding a carpet said, "I will bring another carpet." On the dining table, containing various types of foods, everyone was gathered around Arabella. "Have some more dessert, my lady," a maid offered. Her father noticed her state and expressed worry. "You're far too skinny, my dear." Her mother, while adding her concern, advised, "We need to feed her more nutritious food. I'll tell the chef to double the food budget." While displaying lovely dresses to Arabella, her mother remarked, "Your dresses will be much fancier than Anita." Thinking about jewels, she said, "Arabella should receive all of our family jewels as well. They belong to her in the first place." While thinking about fancier dresses, foods, and shows, Anita said, "My parents wanted to give Arabella the best of everything. That included both things I never received and ones that were already mine." She expanded her thoughts. While Anita strolling down the hallway, she was startled by a voice she heard. There must be a way to break off Anita's engagement to the Archduke's son. She was stunned hearing this. It turned out to be her parents murmuring to each other. Her father said, "We can't just break it off since the Archduke himself made the match." Her mother expressed her perspective. But His Grace addressed the proposal to Marquis Renard's daughter. Her mother, with evident concern, expressed, "If Arabella hadn't gone missing, she would have been the one to marry into their family. If we can find a way to break off the engagement, that spot will naturally become Arabella's." Her father pondered and said, Her mother yelled, "Bella deserves only the best, and I want to ensure she gets all of it." Marquis Renard embraced his wife warmly while comforting her and whispered, "My dear." While she was yelling, "It's heartbreaking. All of it belonged to Bella, but then she came along and dash." He hugged her tightly while expressing his perspective. "I feel the same way. I never wanted to let Anita marry into the Archduchy. Arabella is a much more suitable lady of the house than Anita. We shall do our best to make it come true for her," her father said while Anita was overhearing the whole conversation. Anita, wearing a red gown, standing outside the door, was shocked hearing all this. "Anita must stay here and continue helping me with the family business," her father added. Suddenly, a figure emerged, ethereal and commanding attention with his golden mane and piercing gaze. His presence, though unexpected, offered a brief respite from Anita's tumultuous thoughts. "What's got you so distracted? It's been a while since we've seen each other." His voice, like a soothing melody, reached her ears, stirring emotions long suppressed. Anita, with a trembling voice laden with sorrow, struggled to articulate her anguish. "Oh, my apologies." She persisted in offering apologies, striving to reassure him. "I've been a bit busy lately. I am sorry for turning down your visits and—" Knock. Knock. As they lounged in the opulent chamber, surrounded by decadent snacks atop a polished table, an ominous knock interrupted. The boy's curiosity was piqued. "Are you expecting someone else besides me?" he inquired, his brow furrowed with concern. Anita, taken aback by the unexpected appearance of someone, just exclaimed, "Of course not." Knock. Knock. A second rap echoed through the room. Irritation evident in her demeanor, as the persistent knocking at the door interrupted their exchange, she said, "Excuse me for a moment." Clack. Anita swung the door open, a voice rang out. "Anita." Standing before her were her mother and Arabella, their presence commanding attention. "Why don't you introduce Arabella to Lord Axion?" her mother commanded, her words a dagger plunging into Anita's soul. "She is your sister after all. I'm sure he would like to meet her," she persisted. Upon hearing this, Anita's fury ignited, her spirit brimming with defiance. As she contemplated the possibility of losing the one thing she held dear, she brooded intensely. They can take away everything else. I don't mind, those things were never mine to begin with. In the crucible of adversity, Anita found the ember of her strength, fueling her determination to defy the whims of fate and protect the love she held dear. She pondered. However, when it comes to Axion, I will do everything to ensure they don't steal him from me. The air crackled with tension as her mother stood there, commanded to introduce Arabella to Axion. Inside, Axion's curiosity piqued as he wondered who stood at the threshold and asked, Anita, who is it? Anita's demeanor momentarily faltered when confronted with Axion's inquiry. Anita courteously and subtly turned slightly and uttered, One moment. She swiftly exited, forcefully closing the door behind her with a resounding slam. She left her mother bewildered as she confusedly asked, Anita, what are you dash? Furiously, Anita declared, I refuse. Shock painted her mother's face as she attempted to conceal her comprehension and stammered, What? Anita clarified her stance. I will not introduce Arabella to Axion, she repeated. I refuse. Her mother's shock turned to outrage. What? And she yelled at her. You're always like this. Arabella, positioned behind her mother, bewilderedly gazed and attempted to intervene. And mother? Her mother responded with anger. Leave this to me, Arabella. She must be scolded. Her mother's fury escalated. She glared at Anita and said, When will you stop being so selfish? Don't you feel sorry for your sister? Undeterred, Anita snapped back. It doesn't matter how sorry you feel for her. You can't just barge in and force your daughter on him. Anita added, You're being rude to the Archduke's son, mother. Once again, her mother shouted at her. How dare you? Her mother yelled to bring her awareness. How could you be so selfish and awful, Anita? You should be sharing with your sister. While Arabella was fidgeting continuously, confused at the situation, Arabella, her breath quickening, made an effort to halt her mother. Mother, please don't dash. Arabella felt dizzy, stumbled and suddenly collapsed, her world spinning out of control. Panic engulfed her mother as she cried out for her. Bella, Bella, Bella! Darling! Please wake up! Anita, stunned by the turn of events, murmured, I'll call for a doctor. With a cluttered rush, she turned and disappeared inside. Anita dashed through the halls with urgency, her heart racing. She hurriedly entered a room, nearly bumping into the maid. The maid shocked and yelled, Eek! A Lady Anita? Gasping and panting, Anita wasn't able to utter a word. The maid flinched and asked, Why are you in such a hurry? Anita barely uttered, Call for a doctor. The maid was shocked hearing this. A doctor? Anita hurriedly explained to the bewildered maid. Arabella fainted in front of the first reception room on the first floor. The maid gasped and could just ask, A Lady Arabella fainted? The maid's trembling hands dropped the flower pot she was holding, mirroring the shock that rippled through Anita. Yes, my lady. I'll call for a doctor right away. Anita breathed deeply and turned back. Anita's thoughts raced faster than her feet as she retraced her steps. Each stride echoed the pounding of her heart, and her mind swirled with suspicion. The doctor who examined Arabella the day she arrived assured us she was in perfect health. So why would she faint so suddenly? Anita's mind whispered, wrestling with doubt. Suddenly she paused, lost in her tumultuous thoughts. A chilling realization gripped her. Was this her plan all along? Axion, retaining his captivating demeanor, sat with inquisitive eyes. Arabella sat nervously in front of the Axion, and suddenly her trembling voice shattered the tense silence as she stuttered. I apologize for barging in like this. To alleviate the tension, she included, Anita should be back soon. Axion offered a curt acknowledgement and said, I see. His piercing gaze bore into Arabella, sending shivers down her spine. Arabella was sweating as she was scared, just pondered silently within her own mind. Mother told me he was a polite young nobleman, but he's a bit scary. In the midst of Arabella's internal turmoil, memories flooded her consciousness like a raging river. The image of her concerned mother. While she was just worried about Anita, she must have been shocked seeing me faint like that. I'm glad it didn't take me long to wake up. She recalled her mother shouting in concern. Are you all right, Arabella? And Arabella, on coming to consciousness, just responded, Where is Anita? To steer clear of discussing Anita, her mother simply remarked, Don't mind her, are you feeling all right? After an epiphany, her mother uttered with a grin on her face, This is you should go inside and introduce yourself to Lord Axion. While her mother was trying to pull her, Arabella could just utter, Huh! What about Anita? Her mother hastily replied, She'll be back soon. Go ahead and wait in there. Arabella was trembling, sitting in front of Axion, questioned herself. Maybe he's mad that I barged in without asking him, just like Anita said. Arabella felt extremely anxious, finding it increasingly difficult to remain seated. She yearned to flee and found herself engaging in silent self-talk within her mind. This is so suffocating. I don't want to be here. She just squeezed herself while thinking about her parents' words. But I don't want to disappoint Mother and Father, her father had said to her. I am sure the Archduke's son will take a liking to you, Arabella. Her mother had reprimanded her. You have to make a good impression, all right? I apologize for making you uncomfortable. She finally managed to utter, her voice betraying a hint of apprehension. Axion's response pierced through the tension like a blade. You have no reason to apologize to me. You weren't the one insisting on this unpromised meeting. Arabella's heart skipped a beat as realization dawned upon her. She pondered, Oh, did he hear everything we said outside? The shock of the possibility reverberated through her, leaving her speechless for a moment. Axion continued, offering a slight smile along the way. And as you said, Anita will be back soon. As she locked her eyes on him, a stream of thoughts flowed through her mind. He seems like a different person when he talks about Anita. Anita's mind swirled with a torrent of thoughts as she treaded through the mansion's corridors, her heart heavy with uncertainty. Arabella, did you go as far as fainting to fool me and meet Axion? Or perhaps it was her own mother, pulling the strings behind Arabella's actions. She also thought about her mother's harsh words. How could you be so selfish and awful, Anita? You should be sharing with your sister. She questioned herself. Was it Mother's order? It must have been. She wants Arabella to have the best of everything after all. Each step she took seemed to echo the resentment that lingered within the mansion's walls, a stark reminder of her isolation. She thought, everyone in this mansion resents me. They look at me as if I'm someone who took everything from Arabella with no remorse. While contemplating, she doubted herself. Do I have to give everything of mine to Arabella just to be accepted in this household? Lost in this maze of confusion, she finally reached the door and hesitantly knocked. Knock. Knock. With a creak, the door opened. She looked at Axion and a poignant realization dawned upon her. Axion is the only one I can call mine. Do I give you up too? Axion turned with a smile and Arabella rushed towards Anita and said, Anita! And she immediately apologized. I'm sorry for worrying you. Whereas Anita, looking at her, just thought, You're here to take everything from me. Arabella gently squeezed Anita's hand and smiled. Where have you been? I was waiting for you. Anita continued talking to Arabella in her mind. So why are you smiling at me like that? As Arabella tentatively approached Anita, her heart raced with nervous anticipation. Having a glance at Axion, she began. Anita. But before she could finish, Anita abruptly said, You can go. Stunned, Arabella's face lit up with joy and she stuttered. Really? Relief flooded through Arabella as Anita's words softened, revealing vulnerability. Upon noticing Axion's presence nearby, she whispered softly, Thank you. Arabella breathed, her fear dissipating in the face of unexpected understanding. Creak! She opened the door. With a newfound sense of freedom, Arabella's face lit up with a genuine smile. "Okay then, have a good time with Duke, Anita," she said. Observing Arabella walking with genuine joy, Anita contemplated quietly. How strange. Arabella is the one who had a rough life growing up in poverty, and I was the one who enjoyed the luxuries of growing up in a noble house. She continued pondering. Still, somehow, Arabella is much more cheerful and innocent than I am. Creak. The door was closed. Anita's heart pounded with a mixture of guilt and relief as she turned towards Axion, her words heavy with regret. "I apologize for my mother's rude behavior, Axion." Axion, with an air of grace, responded softly with a smile. "It's fine." Anita sighed, continued in a respectful manner. "I am sorry, but I think we should end our meeting early." Axion stood up from the chair as he spoke. "All right." Axion, while stepping towards Anita, said with genuine kindness, "Anita, I would like to invite you to the Archduke's mansion next time?" he asked politely. "Will you come to see me?" Anita, feeling a glimmer of hope amidst her turmoil, stood transfixed as Axion's charming personality enveloped her. She considered it. "My dear is telling me that I can run to him for help. I'll send you an invitation tomorrow afternoon," he promised. In the depths of her mind, she pondered. He's saying to run away from the house that has treated me like a nuisance since Arabella's return. And responded, "All right." Anita, who had long felt overshadowed and neglected in her own family, continued pondering. "And come to the Lacade Manor, where everyone will welcome me." In the dimly lit dining room, a table was decorated with an array of various foods. Bella sat at the polished wooden chair around the table, her delicate frame barely making a dent in the cushion of the chair. Her father's voice, gentle yet laced with worry, cut through the silence, addressing her. "Do you like the food, Bella?" he inquired, his eyes betraying concern. A faint smile played on Bella's lips as she nodded softly. "Yes, father. It's delicious," she replied, her voice barely audible. Her mother's concern was piercing through the air as she said, "Have some more, you're far too skinny." Yet, amidst the facade of familial concern, Arabella's thoughts were consumed Anita, whose silent suffering remained unnoticed. Anita, relegated to the sidelines, picked at her salad, a symbol of her unnoticed presence in the family dynamics. But Arabella reached out with a gentle inquiry. "Anita, do you not like steak? All you've been having is a salad." Anita's response was hesitant. She was avoiding Bella's gaze. "Oh, are you watching your weight?" "I don't think there's any need for that," Bella offered, her concern genuine. With a smile on her face, her mother replied, "Anita's never been a heavy eater." Her mother's voice, tinged with concern, redirected the focus onto Bella, whose slender frame seemed to amplify the weight of her parents' worry. "More importantly, you should be the one eating more. You are all bones," her mother pleaded. Her father added, "That's right. You should be worried about yourself. You need to gain some weight." But as their concerns swelled to suffocating proportions, Bella, while fidgeting, apologized. "Oh, I'm sorry. I'll have more." But her mother amicably said, "Why are you apologizing? You did nothing wrong." Her father added his guilt. "We're the ones to blame. We were stuffing ourselves while you starved." Her father gazed at Anita and said, "Isn't that right, Anita?" Anita paused eating. Her father and mother both wore icy expressions as they glared at her. Her father took up the reins of reprimand, his words echoed with authority and disappointment. "I heard all about how you treated Arabella earlier today," he yelled. "How could you be so rude to your sister? Your sister suffered while you enjoyed extravagant food and clothing in this house." Arabella flinched at the sight of her father's anger. Her father persisted. "You should feel sorry for her." Anita clinked the knife in the salad. While wiping her tears, Anita said, "While I understand why you two feel bad about the way Arabella grew up, please don't use me as a tool to lessen your guilt," she implored, her words a defiant plea for acknowledgement, a refusal to be a pawn in their game of absolution. Her father furiously yelled, "Anita! How dare you say such things in front of your sister?" Arabella stuttered nervously. "Oh." Finally, unable to bear the weight of their disdain any longer, Anita rose from her seat, her resolve steeling against their taunts. "I'll excuse myself so you three can keep playing house," she declared, her voice trembling with suppressed emotion. Her mother's gaze burned with fury as Anita dared to defy their expectations. "How dare you!" she spat, her words laced with venom. Ignoring her mother's searing glare, Anita turned to leave, her footsteps echoing in the strained silence. But her mother's anger refused to be contained. "Hey! Sit back down right now!" she demanded, her voice rising to a crescendo. Her father's belated call of her name only added to the chaos, a feeble attempt to halt her retreat. "Anita!" he shouted. Meanwhile, terrified Arabella nudged and accidentally dropped the fork from her hand. Anita's mother attempted to rein in her husband's outburst. "Darling! You mustn't yell in front of Arabella. You're scaring her," she implored, the concern in her voice a stark juxtaposition to her earlier hostility. While seated, scared Arabella apologized as she reached down to retrieve her fork. "I am sorry." But her father's sudden realization softened his tone as he tenderly addressed her. No, I'll apologize, dear. I wasn't mad at you." Arabella sat on the floor conversing with her father while the maids cleaned up the spilled food. Her father added, "I was worried that Anita may have hurt your feelings. Pay no mind to what she says. She's always been difficult." Arabella was just listening to her father carefully. Click. Clack. Anita angrily swung open the door, the noise audible in the dining room. On this noise, Arabella just turned and said quietly, "Anita." Arabella's mother, seeking solace for her daughter, whispered to her husband, "Darling, are you really going to let Anita behave like that?" Her husband with a grit contemplated and ordered a maid. "Tell Anita to see in my office in an hour." Upon hearing her father's directive, Anita mused. "He told me to see him in an hour." While retrieving a book from the bookshelf, she pondered. "But it'll take him at least 2 until he's done fawning over his beloved daughter." While stepping towards the sofa, she said, "I'll just read a book until then." Anita, lost in the pages of a tome chronicling the empire's origins, mused. "This book is about the founding of the empire." As she flipped through its pages, she admitted, "It's not exactly an exciting book, but I like it. Because it talks about Lake Alkenti." Recalling its significance, she reflected. Alkenti. The spirit animal that aided the first emperor in founding the empire is supposedly from this lake. Anita mused. "Just thinking about the lake makes me feel better. Because it reminds me of who I met there." Suddenly a vivid flashback emerged. A young girl holding a woman in the lake. The girl carrying the lady out of the water. The girl coughing out and expelling water. The girl wondered at something. A boy with azure eyes. A boy with a captivating demeanor and golden hair. She mused. Lake Alkenti is where I met a boy with eyes bluer than this legendary lake. 8 years ago. Amidst a tableau adorned with an array of delectable treats, laughter and conversation filled the air. Seated around the opulent table were 2 elegant ladies accompanied by their enchanting young daughters. "Look at all those white flowers!" exclaimed one of the ladies, her gaze drawn to the resplendent flowers adorning the surroundings. Awestruck by the sight, one of the little girls could not contain her wonder. "Oh my!" she exclaimed with a mix of delight and curiosity. Joining in the admiration, the other lady expressed her intrigue. "I wonder what they're called?" Among the gathering was 9-year-old Anita Renard, a picture of youthful innocence and curiosity. Observing the scene with a cup of tea in hand, Rachel Savi, the eldest daughter of Count Savi, addressed Lady Renard with a hint of concern. "Miss Renard, you've just been staring at the lake this whole time. You must be bored." Turning her attention from the serene vista of the lake, Lady Renard reassured. Of course not, Miss Savi. With a pointed glance towards Anita, she sought to re-engage her attention. So you would recall what I was just talking about, wouldn't you? Caught momentarily off guard, Anita flashed a sheepish smile before swiftly responding. Indeed, I do. The flower you were wondering is called Robina. It's a flower with a scent as powerful as its beauty. With a polite nod, she added, I hope that helps. Satisfied with the response, Lady Renard acknowledged. Yes, well, thank you. As the afternoon tea continued, Anita, her youthful exuberance momentarily subdued, silently pondered. I wonder how much longer I have to be here. The park adjacent to Lake Alkenti was renowned as a favored rendezvous for the aristocracy. Here, young noble ladies often convened for afternoon tea, and today's gathering was no exception. Miss Renard's stern gaze pierced Anita as she scolded her softly. Though I had a separate reason for coming, that one keeps glaring at you, you should try to befriend her. Adding a touch of assurance, she continued, They want to be friends with you. Anita, though aware of the truth, tapped her temple and pondered silently. No way. What they want is to be close to my family. Seated at the table with others, Anita's mind drifted. This mote of light is a low-level spirit only I can see. I first met it here 2 years ago. Recalling the comforting melody it brought, Anita mused. Whenever I'm near Lake Alkenti, I can hear its voice. Perhaps it held a magic that could aid her parents in finding her lost sister. To safeguard this possibility, Anita resolved to keep it a secret. Feeling a unique connection to the voice, Anita pondered. I wonder why only I can speak to this. It doesn't seem like anyone else can sense its presence. The voice pierced her thoughts, urgently. Anita, someone fell in the lake. Anita scanned the surroundings, desperation creeping in as no one moved to help. Is there no one around to help? As panic set in, she realized there was no time for explanations. No. There isn't. She started to lose consciousness, so she needs help immediately. Conflicted, Anita clenched her dress tightly, pondering her options. Should I ask everyone to go on a walk? She wondered, only to answer herself. No. If she's already losing consciousness, there is no way for me to explain how I know that someone is drowning. Unable to articulate the inexplicable voice she heard, Anita remained in turmoil. In that case, Anita, amidst confusion and hesitation, finally made a decision and rose to her feet. All eyes fixated on her, wondering about her next move. Anita, enveloped in a fog of uncertainty, uttered, I'm going to take a walk around the lake. As she headed towards the water, a familiar voice echoed, Over there. Anita swiftly removed her shoes, affirming. She already sank below the surface. Placing her shoes delicately on the lake shore, she urged, Try to get people to come here. The voice interrupted once more. I can't, wait, don't tell me you're. Anita, propelled by a sense of urgency, moved towards the lake to rescue the person. The voice persisted. Hold on, Anita! Anita! Though bewildered, Anita pressed on, determined to aid the person in distress. Ignoring the voice, she leaped into the water. Splash! Anita spotted a lady in the lake and internally exclaimed, There she is! Despite her efforts, she struggled to lift the lady out of the water and cried out, I can't pull her up on my own. Anita waited, hoping for assistance, and wondered, How much longer until someone gets here? As fatigue set in, she realized, At this rate, I might drown too. Then, a sudden sight caught her attention, filling her with hope. What's that? A pillar of water? Holding onto the pillar, they both emerged from the water's grasp. Astonished, she marveled. A mysterious pillar of water saved us. Coughing up water, Anita contemplated the miraculous intervention of the enigmatic pillar. She sat there, still in awe, reminiscing about the miraculous pillar that had left her breathless. A pillar of water, she uttered softly. While refreshing this memory, Anita said, It was an unexplainable phenomenon, but I wasn't surprised. As Anita sat by the lakeshore, lost in wonder, a distant voice broke the tranquility. Your Grace! Someone was urging people to make way for Prince Lakade. That is Archduchess Lakade. Please stand aside. Anita, while reflecting on the lake's profound history, explained. This lake is part of the founding myth of the empire, after all. Someone inquired the lady beside her with utmost respect. Are you all right, Your Grace? Then, out of the blue, a voice addressed her directly, expressing gratitude. I don't know how to thank you, miss. Suddenly, Anita was jolted from her thoughts as a charming figure approached her, his presence commanding attention. I am Axion Lakade. He introduced himself, his blue eyes sparkling. Thank you for saving my mother. Anita was momentarily taken aback by his charisma but managed to respond. It was nothing. That was how Axion and Anita met for the first time. I don't think I told him my name back then. Anita mused, lost in contemplation. As she pondered how Axion had managed to discover her identity and reached out to her, she reflected. However, Axion somehow found out who I was and sent me a letter. She continued to ruminate. That was we got to know each other. Glancing at the pendulum clock, she contemplated departing, remarking, I guess I should get going. Click. Clack. She was descending the stairs adorned in a regal green maxi, the red carpet guiding her path. Mid-stride, she halted abruptly upon overhearing a hushed conversation from a nearby room. Arabella fainted today, but the doctor couldn't identify the cause. Her parents whispered urgently to each other. Concern etched on her mother's face, she implored her father. We need to hurry up and break off Anita's engagement. If rumor were to start about Arabella being ill, she'll never be able to marry into the Archduchy. The revelation hit Anita like an unexpected blow. Her father, considering an alternative, proposed. But Arabella could still marry the prince, couldn't she? Her mother's incredulous response echoed through the room. The prince? Suspicion clouded her thoughts as she questioned. Are you talking about the cruel man infamous for his vast experience with women? With conviction, her mother declared. There is no saying we won't end up like the Empress's family. Her mother's shocked inquiry silenced her father, leaving him unable to offer a retort. Their mother emphasized her point. The prince is not an option. Contemplating Arabella's fate, her mother expressed empathetically. We have to make up for all the love Arabella missed out on, even after she gets married. Amidst the charged atmosphere, her father proposed a daring plan to her mother. How about this, then? We'll ensure that the Empress notices Anita. Anita, eavesdropping at the doorway, was stunned by her parents' discussion regarding her fate. Undeterred, her father elaborated on his scheme, suggesting, if Anita becomes a suitress for the prince, it'll be easier to break off her engagement. And with her broken engagement as an excuse, we can also refuse the prince's marriage proposal. Enthusiastic about the idea, her mother exclaimed, That's a great idea! Let's do that, my darling. Anita, seething with anger as she listened, reflected bitterly. I did so much for my family, yet this is how they thank me. Contemplating her father's past actions, she sadly mused. I am really starting to wonder why does my father treat me like this without a second thought. Recalling the day she rescued the Archduchess, she questioned herself. I was the one who rescued the Archduchess that day, so why does he act like this engagement was offered to our household in general? Fed up with her obedient facade, Anita contemplated her father's expectations, pondering. Does he really believe I will continue to stay obedient and loyal to the family? Because I'm his daughter and that's my duty? That makes no sense. Anita's suspicions about her parents' peculiar treatment gnawed at her. I look nothing like either of my parents. People have always had doubts about my lineage because of that. Striding over the crimson carpet in the grand mansion, memories flooded back to Anita of the time when her sister Arabella's arrival had sparked rumors about her lineage. And once Arabella returned, the rumors only got worse. Recalling an overheard conversation among the maids, Anita's heart sank. Don't you think it's strange? One maid remarked to another. Then, correcting herself, she added, Lady Anita, I mean. Lady Arabella is the spitting image of her parents, but Lady Anita isn't resembles. Everybody whispers about it, but they all agree. It's strange. The other maid speculated. Who knows? She might not even be a noble dash. Caught eavesdropping, the maid gasped at the sight of Anita. Staring her down, Anita's voice cut through the air like a whip. How impudent! How dare you speak about me like that? The maid, trembling and bewildered, stammered. That's not what I meant, my lady. Anita's fury surged as she commanded. Leave this house at once. I'll personally make sure my mother knows that her insolent maids have been bad-mouthing their masters. Anita left the room while the maid kept pleading for forgiveness. She pondered. More and more people are doubting my rightful place here. If I don't do something, I'll lose everything to Arabella. With a pang of empathy for herself, Anita reflected. My place here, my engagement, and Axion. Clenching her fists, she declared through gritted teeth. I won't let you do this to me. With steely determination, she proclaimed. I won't let you use me like this. Anita stood in the dimly lit chamber, her eyes fixed on the celestial canvas outside, adorned with twinkling stars. Knock. Knock. Suddenly, a firm knock echoed through the silence, prompting Anita to grant entry with a composed, Come in. Clack. A maid entered, who announced, My lady, Sir Elmont of the Lackade Knights is here. Anita, while introducing, said, This is my personal maid, Harriet. She's the only staff member in this house who is kind to me. Reflecting on their dynamic, Anita pondered. But that's probably just because I reward her generously. Memories of her treatment with Harriet flashed through her mind. Expressing gratitude for Harriet's dedication, Anita commended. I see. Good work. With a graceful gesture, she bestowed a glittering clip upon Harriet, remarking, This is for you, Harriet. Do with it whatever you want, she said. Harriet's face lit up with joyous appreciation, exclaiming, Thank you, my lady. Click. Clack. As Harriet retreated, her steps resonated with newfound contentment. Gazing at the gift, she whispered to herself, I'm glad I decided to keep serving Lady Anita. As she admired the glimmering clip, she mused, If I went to serve Lady Arabella like the other servants, there's no way I would receive gifts like this. She contemplated in her mind. Serving Lady Anita, who rewards me as well, is much better than the naive Lady Arabella. With a bouquet in hand, she pondered. It's odd. How can Lady Arabella be so naive when she grew up in poverty? Then, a realization struck her. Shouldn't Lady Anita be the one to act like she lives a sheltered life? While securing the clip in her hair, she suddenly recalled. Why didn't she pat me on the head today, though? I was looking forward to it. Clack. The sound of the door opening startled the man sitting. Anita entered, radiating joy, and addressed. Sir Elmont, responded, inquiring about her well-being. It's been a while, my lady. How have you been? Rick Elmont, Vice Commander of the Lackade Knights. Holding something from him, Anita remarked. I had heard you returned from the northern region, but I didn't expect you to come yourself. Glancing at the letter, she mused. I expected Axion to send a servant. Turning back to Sir Elmont, she remarked. You're only here to hand me an invitation. With a smile, he explained the reason. I volunteered because I wanted to see you. Surprised, Anita replied. How nice of you to say that. While sitting on the sofa, she inquired. Did everything go well in the northern region? Sir Elmont courteously responded. Yes. It was just a small dispute this time. Reflecting on the bitter cold, he admitted. But I really cannot get used to the cold. Delving into the region's harsh climate, Sir Elmont elucidated. The northern region of the Empire is notorious for its freezing temperatures. Even in the middle of the summer, it feels like early winter. Expanding on the region's challenges, he continued. And nothing grows in the barren soil. But valuable mines located in the region led to disputes. Detailing the handling of disputes, he explained. Normally, it would be the Emperor's duty to resolve such issues. but when it comes to the northern region, the Emperor always sends the Archduchy's knights. Anita vividly recalled her exchange with Axion amidst the tranquil garden, her voice resonating with conviction as she questioned, "Why doesn't your family ever challenge the Emperor's orders? The Lackade family is powerful enough to say no." While pondering, Axion responded, "There's something we're looking for in the northern region, you see." With her hair dancing in the breeze, she hung on every word as Axion continued, "This way we can look for it without rousing the Emperor's suspicion, so there's no reason for us to refuse." Anita's mind drifted back to that moment, pondering while having a cup of tea. "I wonder if they're still searching for whatever it is." The delicate clink of the cup meeting saucer punctuated her musings as she remarked, "I'm glad you were able to make it to the capital before winter. Will you be returning to the Archduchy's territory now?" Sir Elmont responded, "No, I need to report to the Emperor about what happened in the Nordash." But before Sir Elmont could complete her answer, a thunderous voice from outside shattered the tranquility and grabbed their attention. "We have a guest from the Lackade family? Why was I not informed of this earlier?" Her mother's voice pierced the air, demanding, "Hurry up and knock on the door." Knock, knock. With a gentle tap, a maid interrupted. "Lady Anita, Lady Renard would like to see you." In a composed tone, Anita graciously replied, "Tell her to come in." The door creaked open, revealing her mother with a visage of astonishment. With a touch of reproach, she addressed Anita. "Goodness, Anita. Why didn't you tell me you were with a guest? I hope I'm not interrupting anything." Sir Elmont rose up. Observing her mother's facade, Anita couldn't help but ponder. Look at her, how pretending like she hadn't just been told about it. Sir Elmont, while greeting, said, "Greetings, Lady Renard." With a courteous nod, he introduced himself. "My name is Rick Elmont, Vice Commander of the Lackade Knights." Lady Renard, visibly wondered, exclaimed, "Oh my! The Vice Commander, you say?" Sitting beside Anita on the plush sofa, she marveled. "I can't believe the Vice Commander himself came all the way here just to deliver an invitation. My daughter has put through so much trouble." Sir Elmont frowned as he asserted, "It's no trouble at all. Anybody from the Order would have jumped at the chance. It concerns Last Anita, after all." With a sly smile playing on her lips, Lady Renard countered, "Is that so? I had no idea Anita was so close to the Archduchy's knights." Maintaining his composure, Sir Elmont respectfully continued, "It isn't just Archduchy knights. Everyone from the Lackade house is very fond of Lady Anita." While explaining the reason, he said, "She saved our Archduchess, after all." In a dismissive tone, Lady Anita retorted, "Oh, you mean what happened 8 years ago?" Attempting to diminish Anita's contribution, Lady Renard interjected, "I heard it was thanks to the doctor she survived, not Anita." Sir Elmont's glare spoke volumes, silencing any further debate. As Lady Renard's gaze fell upon the letter resting on the table, she speculated, "Oh, that must be the invitation." With a hint of anticipation, she reached for it, and said, "I would love to see what Sir Axion wrote dash." Before she could get hold of it, Anita grabbed it, declaring, "I'm sorry, Mother. I have yet to read it myself." She added with a playful smile on her face, "It would be rude for someone other than the recipient to open it first." As she unfolded the letter, its exquisite aroma enveloping her senses, Anita remarked, "It smells of roses." Holding the letter, after realizing that there was a rose petal in it, Anita said, "I see. Axion included a rose petal. How sweet." She read it. "Dearest Anita, I invite you to join me for afternoon tea in the Lackade Manor Gardens in 1 week. I would be delighted to see you. Your friend, Axion." With a serene smile gracing her lips, Anita gracefully declared, "Please let him know I will be there." Acknowledging her decision, Sir Elmont dutifully replied, "Yes, my lady." Meanwhile, seated in contemplation, Lady Renard mulled over her plans. "I have to send Arabella with her. Once she meets her, The Archduchess will realize that Arabella is a much better match. Attempting to broach the subject with Anita, she expressed her concerns. Anita, I worry about Arabella. Making an empathetic face, addressing Sir Elmont, SHR said. While Anita could socialize since she was a child, Arabella never had the chance. In a hushed tone, she lamented. My poor Arabella. Anita, perceptive to her mother's intentions, internally questioned. Is she that desperate to make Arabella Axion's fiancé? Her dream will never come true, so I'll let her continue wasting her time. After a moment's reflection, Anita, cup of tea in hand, casually remarked. I don't mind taking Arabella with me, though I'm not sure if she'll enjoy it. Her mother, quick to reassure, chimed in. I'm sure she will. Turning to Sir Elmont for approval, Anita inquired. Would that be all right, Sir Elmont? His countenance brightened with affirmation. Of course, my lady. You can ask for anything you wish of us. Seeking leave, Sir Elmont respectfully requested. I should head over to the Imperial Palace now. May I take my leave? Anita affirmed. Of course, Sir Elmont. Lady Renard interjected. Please take good care of Anita. Clack. With a resounding click, the door sealed shut behind Sir Elmont's departure. Fixing a steely gaze upon Anita, Lady Renard wasted no time in addressing the issue at hand. Now, Anita, we need to talk. I heard you fired a few maids without my permission today. She yelled furiously. One of them was my personal maid. What is wrong with you? Holding a cup of tea, Anita, composed despite the confrontation, calmly explained. They were bad-mouthing their masters. We can't trust anyone like that to work for us. We can't just fire them without warning? Lady Renard's voice rose in exasperation. Anita set down her teacup delicately, asserting, It was all for your own good, mother. I know you dislike servants like that. With a grim smile on her face, Anita said, They might even tell outsiders about what goes on in our manor. Anita's pointed remarks brought realization to Lady Renard, who reluctantly conceded. Well, that's... Holding back her anger, she said, All right, I'll let it go just this once. There are more important matters. Anita echoed her mother's words, questioning. More important matters? With a wide smile, Lady Renard revealed her intentions. When Arabella goes to meet the Empress in 10 days, I would like you to join her. She explained. Arabella has never had afternoon tea with anyone, so she'll need your help. Go with her, so she won't be anxious. Anita's frowned as she contemplated her parents' schemes. They're planning to offer me as a marriage candidate for the prince instead of Arabella when the topic comes up, she realized. Imagining about her engagement, she thought in her mind. If the Empress gets involved, breaking off my engagement to Axion will be a simple matter, and Arabella won't have to marry that womanizer prince either. As Lady Renard rose from the sofa, Anita voiced her concern. Shouldn't you ask Her Majesty for permission first? While standing up, Lady Renard dismissed her daughter's query. She has already permitted it. And about your engagement. Anita squeezed her clothes as Lady Renard's words struck a nerve. Turning to face Anita once more, Lady Renard admonished. You realize that was originally Bella's right. She continued. Know your place and stop deluding yourself, Anita. Lacade Manor. In the serene tranquility of a garden, a lady, engaged in conversation with Axion, broached the subject. I heard you went to see Anita. Seated amidst an array of decadent desserts, she queried Axion further. Has anything changed in that household? Axion's response was succinct. No, everything was the same. With a heavy sigh, she expressed her dismay. So, they still treat her like that? In a poignant flashback, a vision of a young girl, clad in regal blue attire, confided. I would like to travel far away once I come of age. Contemplating her words, the lady surmised. It sounds like she wants to cut ties with her family. A sudden realization dawned upon her, prompting the admission. Judging by the way they treat her, it makes sense. Turning to the innocent girl, she posed a gentle query. Would you like to stay here with us until you come of age? But the girl, with unwavering resolve, declined, stating, Thank you, but I cannot turn my back on my duties. Lost in contemplation, she reflected. She keeps rejecting my offers. I should stop pressing her. Turning back to Axion, she acknowledged her own remorse. I should have rescued her as well. Curious, Axion inquired. Are you worried about Anita? She clarified, burdened by her own sense of guilt. No, but I regret it. I should have insisted on her living with us. In the luxurious ambience of her golden-hued room, Anita savored a cup of tea, clad in a resplendent maroon and green royal max with a delicate white frill. Amidst her solitude, echoes of her mother's reproach lingered, vividly reminding her of recent scoldings. Your behavior has been inexcusable lately. You are confined to your room for the time being. Anita's mind wandered to the previous day's promise of familial unity. Just yesterday, they said, we should eat together as a family for Arabella's sake. She punctuated her contemplation with the clinking of her fork against the salad plate, pondering the mercurial nature of her family's decisions. They changed their minds so easily. Interrupting her reverie, a gentle knock rapped at her door, prompting her to grant entry with a composed, Come in. The creak of the door heralded the arrival of Philip, the Renard family's esteemed butler. With an air of deference, he conveyed his message. My lady, Master Renard wishes to see you in his office. Acknowledging his summons with a nod, she acquiesced. All right. Sensing his lingering presence, she inquired, Is there anything else you want to say? Philip, ever dutiful, hesitated before expressing his apprehension. I believe Master Renard is going to give you more work to do for him. Contemplating the implications, Anita responded calmly. I'm sure he will. Yet, Philip's concern persisted, evident in his next words. It's too much. You are still so young, so why do Master and Mistress Renard always dash? His sentence trailed off as Anita interjected with a gentle smile. That's enough, Philip. As Philip turned to depart, facing away, Anita issued a stern warning. You mustn't jeopardize your position. Firmly, she added. You know what would happen if Father were to hear what you were about to say, don't you? With a tone of reprimand, she continued. You'd be kicked out before you could receive your severance pay. So mind your words. With that, she gracefully returned to her chair. In Philip's mind, a silent acknowledgement echoed. Yes, my lady. I cannot be kicked out just yet. I must stay. Concerned for Anita's well-being, he quietly ruminated. For you, Lady Anita, my true mistress. As Anita entered her father's office, he gestured towards the scattered papers and remarked, Take all this paperwork with you. With raised voice, her father exclaimed, Since you're staying at home all day instead of socializing, you should be able to do this in 4 days. Standing before her father, Anita reflected on the situation. Ever since Arabella returned, he's been actively preventing me from participating in any social events. While her father continued his reprimands, she couldn't help but think, and he's making it sound like it's my fault. Recalling her early responsibilities, she reminisced. I began assisting my father with running our household. Having a flashback of a little girl with bundles of papers in front of her, she said, When I was just 12. Reflecting on a decision made a decade ago, she added, It's already been 10 years since I decided to cut ties with my family once I was old enough because I realized there was no place for Anita Renard in the Renard family. Continuing her train of thought, she expressed, Despite that, I had always considered it my duty to do my part as a member of this house until I am old enough to leave. Considering her steadfast commitment, she reasoned, That's why I always did everything without complaints. Lost in contemplation, she observed the scattered papers on the ground and lamented. However, all I'm doing is busy work that my parents don't want to do. Amidst her reverie, her father's voice cut through, yelling, Why aren't you answering me? This is easy enough for anyone to do in no time. A smirk played on Anita's lips as her father questioned, Are you afraid it might be too hard for you? With a playful glint in her eyes, Anita retorted. If it's that easy, shouldn't you just do it yourself? In response to her defiance, her father yelled. Can't you see I'm letting you do this for your own good? He persisted in his tirade, reminding her of her future. Do you think being the future Archduke's wife is going to be easy? Undeterred, Anita gently countered. Mother doesn't do a single piece of paperwork as the lady of the house. I doubt it'll be any different with the Lacade family. Her father's frustration peaked as he slammed his hand on the table and yelled. I've had enough of your whining. Continuing in a scolding manner, her father asserted. At 17, you are old enough to take care of the family's affairs. Yet, in a rare moment of self-awareness, he mumbled. No, thank you. Anita, determined to make him see reason, responded. Unlike you, father, Axion doesn't need help with anything like this. Infuriated by her assertion, he said. What? With quiet resolve, Anita reaffirmed. He is intelligent and knows what it takes to be the head of the house. Turning away, addressing her father directly, she calmly stated. Please do the work meant for the head of the house on your own, father. As she made her way towards the door, her father's voice echoed furiously behind her. You can't keep acting out like this just because Arabella has returned. His anger escalating, he added, You've crossed the line. When Anita reached the door, she heard her father's final decree. Go to your room and reflect on what you've done. Undeterred by his commands, she retorted. I was just about to. With a resounding slam, she closed the door forcefully behind her. Witnessing her behavior, her father seethed with indignation, thinking, How dare she? His hands clenched in fury, he gritted his teeth, thinking, How long must I tolerate that ungrateful girl? A week later, a carriage arrived. Anita, adorned in a royal blue gown with a white frill, her hair neatly arranged in a bun, was lost in her thoughts. Wondering aloud, she mused. I thought my parents would make sure only Arabella made it to the Lacade manor. Suddenly, her mother appeared, squeezing her hand reassuringly. Anita, she said softly, trying to make her understand. If Bella happens to faint, you have to cover for her. Got it? Anita sighed, inwardly acknowledging the predictability. No wonder, she thought. Both Anita and Arabella settled into the tonga, and as Arabella's nerves got the better of her, she tentatively began. You Anita? Anita, sensing Arabella's hesitation, gently prompted. What? Fidgeting with nerves, Arabella struggled to articulate her thoughts. She could just utter, well. Finally, Anita's patience waned slightly as she urged. If you've got something to say, just say it. Taking a deep breath to steady herself, Arabella replied. Okay. Anita observed Arabella's condition, recognizing the urgency of the situation. At this rate, she won't be able to tell me whatever it is before we arrive. She mused. Arabella, visibly nervous, stuttered. Anita, I don't agree with Mother. Expressing her concerns, she continued. I would like you and Lord Axion to be happy. You're my sister, so how could I ever dash? Before she could finish, Anita interjected. What do you think sisters are like? Arabella, with a slight but joyous smile, responded. Well, sisters love spending time together, and they'll always make up by the next day, even if they fight. Upon hearing Arabella's idealistic view of sisterhood, Anita couldn't help but think, how unrealistic. Directing her question to Arabella, Anita asked, Have you experienced something like that? With a gentle smile, Arabella shared, There was a family that took care of me in the slums. They should be living comfortably now. Continuing her explanation, she added, Father said he sent them money as a way to thank them. Isn't that wonderful? Anita's response was skeptical. Sure, if it were true. Mentally addressing Arabella, Anita thought. But Arabella, our parents are not that generous. Arabella, clutching her gown, reassured. Anyway, don't you worry. I have no intention of stealing Lord Axion from you. Trust me. Inquiring further, Anita asked, "Have you ever talked to Mother about this?" Emphasizing her point, she murmured, Anita added, "Or to your personal maid?" Arabella hesitated, replying, "And no." Anita, feeling the throbbing in her head, remarked, "That means you haven't told them you don't want this. These people won't give up, even if you object. They're too stubborn." Attempting to make Arabella realize, Anita continued, "How do you expect them to know what you're thinking? Arabella, telling me your opinion means nothing." As Anita spoke, Arabella's worry intensified, causing her to tightly grip her clothes. When the tanga finally came to a stop, Anita announced, "We have arrived." While Anita disembarked from the carriage, Arabella remained seated, consumed by her concerns. In the serene surroundings of Lakade Manor Gardens, lush greenery and vibrant flowers adorned the landscape, emanating delightful fragrances. The sun's rays glistened upon the flora, accentuating their brilliance. Arabella, captivated by the beauty surrounding her, couldn't contain her awe, exclaiming, "Wow!" Turning to express her joy, she exclaimed, "It's so beautiful!" Approaching her, Axion noticed her delight and remarked, "If I had known the weather would be so lovely, I would have invited you to Lake Alkenti." Arabella, brimming with happiness, responded, "This garden is more than enough." As she admired the flowers, she couldn't resist commenting, "These flowers are especially beautiful." Turning to Axion, she politely asked, "May I smell them?" Anita stood amidst her thoughts, contemplating, "I wonder what the Robina flower smells like to Arabella." Meanwhile, as Arabella immersed herself in the fragrance of the flowers, she began to feel dizzy. Startled, Anita observed her wobbling figure with concern. Struggling to maintain her balance, Arabella managed to utter, "It smells so nice." Axion, with a smile, inquired, "Is that so?" Arabella nodded weakly, affirming, "Why, yes." Observing Arabella's worsening condition, Anita couldn't help but think, "She's turning really pale." Alarmed, she began to voice her concern. "Arabella? Are you all our dash?" Before she could finish, Arabella staggered and collapsed. Anita's voice echoed through the garden as she called out in distress, "Arabella!" Arabella reclined on the plush bed within the luxuriously appointed chamber, with Axion seated nearby on a comfortable couch. When Arabella's eyelids fluttered, it caught Axion's attention. Upon awakening, Arabella emitted a soft murmur, her consciousness gradually returning. Observing her regaining awareness, Axion gently remarked, "You're awake." Confusion clouded Arabella's mind as she struggled to comprehend the situation. "Who?" Experiencing discomfort, she winced. "Ah." Abruptly, she straightened, her eyes widening in recognition. "Lord Axion?" With a tender tone, Axion inquired, "How are you feeling?" Nervously, Arabella queried, "Where am I? Why am I?" Seeking to reassure her, Axion interjected, "You briefly fainted." Stunned, Arabella stammered, "I did." Expressing concern, Axion asked, "Yes. Are you feeling better?" Arabella, still bewildered, scanned the room, noticing Anita's absence. "What about Anita? Where did she go?" In response to her inquiry, Axion gently responded, "She went to talk to the doctor about your condition. She'll be back with him soon, so do not worry." Understandingly, she acknowledged, "Oh, I see." The room was filled with silence. Axion was in search of Anita. Observing Axion's anticipation for Anita, Arabella reflected on her mother's remark. "Lord Axion seems to have taken a great liking to you, Arabella." Realizing the lack of connection between them, she contemplated. Mother was mistaken. Gazing at Axion, Arabella continued her musings. His eyes only brim with warmth when he looks at Anita. They only brighten when she is in the room. Restlessly, she dwelled on thoughts of Anita. Anita is a kind person. She may appear cold on the outside, but... Having a realization, she pondered. This is wrong. I want Anita too. she addressed Axion. Lord Axion? Startled by her address, he turned towards her. Arabella slumped and said, I really like Anita. Axion, with his piercing blue eyes, fixed his gaze upon her and calmly stated, So. Arabella squeezed her hands and replied, I want her to be happy. I swear. I really want her to be happy. With a hint of hesitation, Arabella stuttered, It's what I. Interrupting gently, Axion interjected, I feel the same way. Arabella's heart skipped a beat as he continued, I, too, wish for Anita's happiness over everything else. As Arabella absorbed his words, her mind raced with thoughts. I think, she pondered, her gaze fixed on him. A soft smile graced Arabella's lips as she considered Anita's well-being. He'll be able to make Anita happy, she concluded, her concern for her friend evident in her thoughts. In the grand hall of Arcade Manor, a doctor engaged Anita in a serious conversation regarding Arabella. I suspect Lady Arabella Renard is suffering from sensitivity to divine power. Anita, visibly taken aback, echoed, Divine power? The doctor affirmed with a grave nod. Yes. As he delved into his explanation, he elucidated. It's something that is typically identified early on in life, but it appears she was never made aware of it. For surety, Anita inquired. Are you certain? Explaining the expertise of the doctors within the Archduchy regarding divine knowledge, he elaborated. All the doctors serving the Archduchy are well versed in magic and divine power. As you know, the imperial family and the Lackade family received divine powers from the spirit animal. Highlighting the significance of such knowledge, he emphasized. Knowledge in such matters is a basic requirement for serving as a doctor here. Anita, reflecting on the ordinary doctor's oversight, mused. That explains why an ordinary doctor wouldn't have noticed her sensitivity. They wouldn't even think to test for it. Contemplating her parents' understanding of the situation, she speculated. Which means our parents definitely wouldn't know. Anita sighed softly, a smile touching her lips as she considered. They must have heard about her fainting by now. I bet they're dying to get her home. Expressing her concerns, Anita inquired, Can she ride in a carriage? The doctor reassured her. Yes, she should be fine after a short break upon waking up. Anita swiftly turned to a nearby maid and instructed. Then please prepare the carriage for us. She should be awake by now. Respectfully, the maid responded. Yes, my lady. As Anita made her way towards the room, she paused in the doorway, observing Axion and Arabella engaged in conversation. I feel the same way. Axion's voice carried through the air, with Arabella seated before him, attentive. Continuing, Axion affirmed, I too, before adding, over everything else. Witnessing the interaction between them, Anita couldn't help but muse. They look good together. Engulfed in her thoughts, Anita couldn't help but speculate. Even if Arabella hadn't returned, my engagement to Axion was never going to last long. Reflecting on her decision a decade ago, she recalled. 10 years ago, I made the decision to cut ties with the Renards once I came of age. Seeking solace in her reasoning, she continued. Which means that my engagement to Axion will be broken off anyway. However, a surge of anger overcame her as she realized something, causing her to clench her hands in determination. However, it still rubbed me the wrong way that they were trying to take Axion, my only friend, away from me. I won't let them do that. Lost in thoughts of Axion, she whispered softly. Axion, you'll stay beside me as a friend, even when we are no longer engaged, right? Observing Axion from a distance, Anita contemplated. I believe our relationship won't change. However, if I do lose you as well. Walking through the halls of Arcade Manor, consumed by self-pity, she lamented. What else would I have left? As they both arrived at Renard Manor, Marquis Renard inquired of Anita. Where is Arabella? Upon entering, Lady Renard replied. I put her to bed in her room. With frustration evident, Marquis Renard slammed his hand down, exclaiming, So, Turning his ire towards Anita, he demanded, "Why didn't you do anything, Anita?" Anita's response was calm yet firm. "What could I have done?" her mother interjected. "Excuse me?" Undeterred, Anita continued, "I'm not a doctor. How was I supposed to prevent Arabella from fainting?" Her father sighed, attempting to realize Anita. "Anita, Bella has had a terrible life." Attempting to convey the hardships of Arabella's life, her father began. "Unlike you, she grew up in poverty. You've always been selfish, Anita, but this is too." Anita swiftly interrupted, her voice firm. "I could never be as selfish as you, father." Stunned by Anita's retort, Marquis Renard asked incredulously, "What?" Anita clarified. "I heard that you were too cheap to reward the poor people who raised Arabella in the slums." They glared at her angrily as her father began. "You!" Anita, undeterred, interjected. "Arabella seems to be under the impression that you sent them money." Her mother's voice rose in protest. "Anita!" Unyielding, Anita continued. "Also, let's make one thing clear. Who is more at fault? Mother, for sending Arabella with me when she knew she might faint, or me, for failing to stop her from faint?" Before Anita could finish her sentence, her father's anger boiled over, and he slapped her. Lady Renard intervened desperately, pleading, "Darling, don't you remember that Anita has to go to the palace?" Lady Renard persisted in making him realize. "But you heard what she just said." Anita, reflecting on her mother's attempt to intervene, wondered. "I wondered why Mother tried to stop him." But then realization dawned on her. But no wonder. Contemplating the document she had stumbled upon a few days prior, Anita mused. "This is why I have no intention of bringing up the document that I found while doing the work that was forced on me a few days ago." Anita pondered further, trying to understand. "I won't have anything to do with them in the future, anyway." As Lady Renard restrained Marquis Renard, she admonished, "You could have punished her once she was back from the palace." Marquis Renard, unable to control his anger, retorted, "But she's not showing any sign of remorse." Anita, with a serene smile, addressed her father. "Father, I'd look out for yourself first." A concerned maid gently touched Anita's swollen face, remarking, "That looks painful. It's really swollen. The bruising might get really bad tomorrow." Suddenly remembering something, the maid's expression brightened. "Oh, I heard that bruises go away faster if you hold raw meat against them," she offered. "Should I bring you some?" Anita, mindful of the consequences, replied, "What if you get caught by the cook?" Sitting on the couch, Anita realized. "Don't worry. A ton of medicine will arrive by tomorrow morning." The maid hesitantly inquired, "By the way, my lady, did Lady Arabella really just faint out of nowhere?" Expressing her concern, she added, "It's worrying to hear that she fainted for no reason." Recalling the reason behind Arabella's fainting spell, Anita had a flashback to when she asked Axion, "Did you do something to the flowers?" Axion confessed, "I needed to check something, so I blessed them with divine power. Though I had no idea it would make Lady Arabella faint." Turning towards Anita, he addressed her. "Anita," then looked at her intently, inquiring, "Are you disappointed in me?" Anita pondered her recent conversation with Axion beneath the starry night sky, wondering aloud. "I wonder what you would have said if I told you I was disappointed in you." Sitting comfortably on her bed, she contemplated further. "Would you have simply smiled?" She recalled how she questioned Axion. "Axion?" Axion inquired, "What?" She startled while thinking how she hesitated before asking, "Are you afraid of?" Anita reminisced about her childhood days when she was sent to Arcade Manor. In the elegant halls of Arcade Manor, a maid called out, "My lady!" desperately seeking Anita's whereabouts. Repeatedly attempting to elicit a response from Anita, she called out again, "Where are you, Lady Anita?" Unable to locate her, she informed another maid, "She's not here. Let's look somewhere else." Finding solace amidst a garden filled with vibrant flowers, Anita questioned herself. What am I doing? Reflecting on the warmth and kindness of the people at Arcade Manor, she mused. Everyone is so kind and sweet to me. They're much nicer than anyone at Renard Manor. As she pondered, she nervously squeezed her clothes, feeling unworthy of their kindness. Recalling the Archduchess' caring demeanor towards her, Anita whispered, But I feel like I don't deserve their kindness. Considering her father's intention behind sending her to Arcade Manor, she thought, Father sent me here so our families could grow closer. I know I shouldn't be acting like this, but... Feeling overwhelmed, she bowed her head into her lap, admitting, It's suffocating. I feel like I can't breathe. In the midst of her turmoil, Axion suddenly appeared, declaring, There you are. Startled by his sudden presence, Anita exclaimed, Axion? Meeting her gaze with his piercing blue eyes, Axion stated, I've been looking for you. Anita looked towards Axion and asked, Why? She asked a question which startled Axion. Don't you hate me? While recalling the miraculous day when she saved the Archduchess, she reminisced. After the day I saved the Archduchess from Lake Alkenti, the two of us never had a chance to talk. Despite the constant animosity from her own family, Anita remarked, I was so used to being hated that I didn't really mind. With a heavy heart, she buried her head in her hands, feeling the weight of her loneliness. Axion, crouching beside her, softly assured, I don't hate you. Anita was stunned by his words, her eyes wide with disbelief. In a reassuring tone, Axion continued, Anita, there's no way I could hate you. Listening intently, Anita's gaze remained fixed on him, her expression a mix of surprise and relief. Extending his hand towards her, Axion gently urged, Let's go. Despite her hesitation, Anita reached out and clasped his hand. Axion grasped her hand and helped her to her feet. Anita couldn't help but reflect, That was the first time someone reached out to me like that. While recalling how Anita stood up, holding Axion's hand amidst the tranquil garden, she reflected, That's why I didn't notice that in that moment. Lost in thought, she continued, contemplating Axion's deep blue eyes. Axion's eyes were filled with desperation. A few days later, a maid hurriedly carrying a pot dashed towards a room. Upon entering, she addressed the Archduchess, who sat beside Axion as he lay in bed. I'll watch over him tonight. Please go and rest, Your Grace. She was Ella, a maid at Lacade Manor. The Archduchess declined, insisting, I'm fine. You should go and rest, though. Gently placing her hand on Axion's head, she remarked, This happens every summer, so I should be used to it by now, but I can't help feeling bad for him. Seated beside Axion, she inquired about Anita. Oh, has Anita gone to sleep? The maid confirmed. Yes, I took her to her room. Suddenly recalling something, she addressed the Archduchess once more. Your Grace? I noticed this when I was helping Lady Anita change, but she had several bruises on her side like she was pinched. Concern etched on her face, she added. There were some wounds that looked older as well. The Archduchess was taken aback. Wounds? While reassuring, the maid asked. Yes. What should I do? Should I use holy water to heal them to prevent scarring? Frowning slightly, the Archduchess replied. Yes, go ahead. You can get holy water from the temple in the morning. The maid sighed softly, acknowledging. Yes, Your Grace. Reflecting on the situation, she added. I wondered why Lady Anita refused help with getting dressed. I thought she might have been too shy, but it makes sense now. Who could have done that to her? The startled Archduchess pondered aloud. I heard that, a week ago, the Renard family wanted to test the parentage of a girl and asked for the Imperial Palace's holy relic. I wonder. Lost in thought, she mused. It's not as if the holy relic is sure to work. There is no way of knowing. With a determined expression, the Archduchess gritted her teeth, thinking. But those wounds, they were most likely caused by the girl claiming to be Arabella. In a decisive manner, she pondered. If this girl has something to do with Anita's wounds. The Archduchess contemplated, I should let the Renard family know. Interrupted by a knock on the door, she watched as it opened, revealing someone bearing a message. Your Grace, you're needed in your office. Rising from her chair, the Archduchess acknowledged. All right, and exited the room. Spotting Anita waiting outside, she called out, Anita? Crouching down in front of her, she inquired gently. What is it? Anita explained. I came because I saw the doctor hurry over here. I'm sorry if I'm being nosy, the Archduchess politely said. Not at all. You must have been worried about Axion. Attempting to comfort her, she continued. It's nothing to worry about. He tends to get sick like this at times, you see. While urging Anita to maintain secrecy, the Archduchess emphasized. But you have to keep it a secret. The successor of the Archduchy has many enemies, so his weaknesses can't be revealed. Anita nodded solemnly, assuring, I won't tell anyone. Recalling something, the Archduchess inquired. By the way, Anita, I heard that you had some wounds. Are you all right? Stunned by the sudden question, Anita faltered. Oh. Attempting to divert attention, she replied. I didn't mention them because they're nothing to worry about. Concern evident in her eyes, the Archduchess gently took Anita's hand as she pondered. I suppose that means that the Renards know about them, too. That's a relief to hear, but… Lost in thought, she mused. Seeing that there are also some old wounds, Anita must have kept those a secret from her parents. While gently squeezing Anita's hand, the Archduchess added, Anita, it's best to tell others about any pain you go through. Seeking to comfort her, she continued. And if you like, you can visit more often and stay longer. Anita replied gratefully. Thank you, but I don't think that's possible. As she withdrew her hand, Anita explained. I heard the children of farmers start tilling the soil when they turn 10, and I'm 10 years old now. Realizing her responsibilities, she added solemnly. That means I must study as much as possible to help Father with his work. I need to be able to deal with things like this on my own. Hearing the Archduchess's question, Anita was taken aback and stood up. Bending towards her, the Archduchess asked with concern, Did your father tell you that? Anita nodded silently, confirming, Yes. After a moment of contemplation, the Archduchess responded, I see. With a gentle smile, she turned to Anita and asked, Anita, could you stay by Axion's bedside for a bit? I need to go and take care of something for a moment. Meeting her gaze, Anita replied, Okay, I will. Patting Anita's shoulder, the Archduchess remarked, You're very kind. Stunned by the compliment, Anita recalled, Kind. Approaching Axion lying on the bed, Anita gently touched his hand and addressed him. Axion. Noticing his cold hand, she expressed, Your hand is cold. It was so warm earlier. Axion frowned slightly and murmured in discomfort. Patting his hand softly for a moment, Anita withdrew her hand, once again recalling the Archduchess's words. You're very kind. Puzzled by the remark, she pondered. What a strange thing to say. Everything I know about kindness comes from staying here. As Axion groaned softly, Anita glanced at him and thought, I wish I could have Axion's nightmares for him. With a sigh, she sat on the ground beside his bed, squeezing his hand gently. Whispering to him, she confessed, I'm used to them, after all. I can handle them better. Axion awoke to the dimly lit ambience of his room, his gaze falling upon Anita, peacefully asleep with her head bowed by his bedside. With a gentle touch, he carefully lifted her, ensuring she was settled comfortably upon the bed. As he tenderly tucked the quilt around her, a faint expression of discomfort crossed her face, accompanied by a murmured, Concern etched across his features. Axion inquired softly, Are you having nightmares? Gazing at her, he said, I'll have them instead. As he gently caressed her hair, he persisted in his tender care. So you can have nice dreams. Anita's breathing softened as she drifted into a deeper slumber, prompting Axion to remain by her side, his presence a reassuring comfort. Leaning in closer and tenderly clasping her hand, he reminisced. Do you remember, Anita? The day we first met. I keep thinking about that day, and I'm really glad. With a fond gaze fixed upon her face, he added, that you managed to come back from that lake. While explaining the Archduchy's history, Axion said, this empire was founded by the first emperor, who received divine power from a spirit animal, and 2 archduchies were formed. He continued, one archduchy was given to the emperor's sibling as a title, and his children received the title of count. And the other is the Lakate Archduchy, which originated from the first emperor's second son and has been passed down ever since. Thinking about the actual truth of the empire, he mused. However, the empire's actual truth differs from the well-known founding myth. The spirit animal known to have helped the first emperor actually put a terrible curse on the imperial family. And anyone who falls into Lake Alkenti, the source of the curse, drowns in its waters. The imperial family placed knights around the lake to prevent further deaths and maintain its divine reputation. Axion continued to delve into the intricate tapestry of the Archduchy's history, elucidating its complexities and challenges. Despite their efforts, he remarked solemnly, people still drown in the lake, proving its inescapability. Recalling the fateful day when Anita gallantly rescued Axion's mother, he reminisced. But that's where I met Anita. Reflecting on Anita's ignorance of the lake's sinister curse, a truth clandestinely guarded by the imperial family, Axion mused. Anita didn't know about the lake's curse as it was a truth only the imperial family was aware of. Contemplating Anita's miraculous survival against all odds, he remarked, it was probably why she has no idea how amazing it was that she survived. Transported back to the harrowing day when Anita valiantly rescued his imperiled mother, Axion vividly recalled the urgency in someone's voice as they implored their companion. Hurry! We must check on her Grace's condition. Recalling the events, Axion reflected. Those who don't have divine power have no chance of surviving the lake, so the fact that Anita didn't drown is nothing short of a miracle. Contemplating the reason behind Anita's miraculous survival, he pondered. I wondered whether the lake's spirit animal had perhaps saved Anita. Replaying the scene in his mind, Axion reminisced about the day Anita saved his mother. He remembered how he observed Anita standing behind her at a distance, while everyone was asking the Archduchess, Your Grace, are you all right? But it didn't matter. Anita had saved the Archduchess, and so I was going to treat her as our family's savior. Axion mused. Thinking about Anita, Axion admitted. But at some point, I found myself unable to take my eyes off of her. Reflecting on the rarity of divine powers in his era dominated by healing abilities, he remarked, I was the only person born with divine powers in an era where none but healing exists. Reflecting on his challenges, Axion pondered, and the Emperor is always waiting for the right moment to strike me down, while the Holy Temple is ready to strike him down. Sipping tea at a table, he contemplated. That's why I've always felt out of place and different. Observing 2 maids, one holding a cake for a celebration, he considered. The kind people of the Archduchy have no way of knowing, of course. As he delicately placed the cup in its saucer, a reflective moment dawned upon him. I often feel like an anomaly, as if I don't quite belong anywhere, he pondered. And in some peculiar way, Anita seems to share the same sentiment. Recalling a recent gathering where he had noticed her, he couldn't help but muse. She always seemed so isolated, as if carrying a silent burden. Placing a hand over his heart, he gently squeezed, the ache within palpable. Every time I see her, it's as if a pang shoots right through here, he murmured softly. Maintaining his hand over his heart, he contemplated further. If only she possessed divine abilities like mine, perhaps we could find solace in our shared experiences. Axion was discreetly observing the maids as they diligently searched for Anita. One of the maids exclaimed, My lady! Her voice echoed through the corridors as she repeated urgently, Where are you, Lady Anita? Reflecting on the tumultuous events, he found himself lost in thought. Then, on the day I thought I had lost you, he reminisced, recalling the frantic search that ensued. His hurried footsteps halted abruptly as he caught the sound of her stifled sobs. Recollecting the moment he discovered her in tears amidst the garden's serenity, a revelation struck him. I realized something, he murmured softly. As he watched her trembling form, a newfound clarity emerged. It didn't matter at all that you didn't have divine powers, he reflected inwardly. Gently brushing Anita's closed eyelids with his fingertips, he pondered. At first, I wished that you were like me and had divine powers, but now, I'm glad you don't. Turning his gaze to her peaceful face, he elucidated. Because that means you won't suffer through the things I did. With a tender touch to her cheek, he addressed her with gentle solemnity. So, Anita. Recalling her poignant inquiry. Don't you hate me? He paused, contemplating his response. As he pondered, he expressed, There's no way I could hate you. Tenderly holding her hand, he softly remarked. I can't do anything that would make you sad. Lying on the bed beside her, he contemplated. That's why I can't ask you about certain things. Reflecting on her eating habits, he mused. Like why you barely eat anything. Recalling her solo visits, he remarked. Or why you don't have a single maid accompany you when you come to visit your fiancé. While drifting into sleep, he contemplated. And whether you're genuinely happy. In the present moment, the maid, while applying ointment, observed. Your cheek is really swollen. With her back turned to Anita, she continued. Also, the Marquis said that you mustn't go anywhere for the time being. However, he sent for so much medicine right away, so he must be worried. While gazing into the mirror, Anita pondered. Yeah, right. He's just afraid of anyone seeing me like this. As the maid stood up, she remarked. But it looks like the bruising will go away quickly. Isn't that great? Anita calmly responded. It is. While Anita was opening a drawer, the maid added. Oh, we also got some holy water from the temple today. Anita, slightly intrigued, replied. Is that so? As she gestured for the maid to come towards her, Anita softly uttered. Here. The maid, startled, asked. Why? Clearly frightened, Anita couldn't help but wonder. Does she want more? As the maid approached, Anita handed her some beans, saying, Good work, Harriet. Harriet gratefully replied, Thank you. With a joyful stride, Anita declared, I'll go and prepare breakfast then. I'll come to get you later, Lady Anita. Anita replied calmly, All right, as she closed the door behind her. Now alone, with the wind whispering outside, Anita pondered, What is this strange feeling? Her long hair swayed gently as she stood there, clad in a crimson maxi, lost in her thoughts. It's like I had a dream I can't remember. There was something nostalgic about it. Meanwhile, Axion stood at his window, also lost in contemplation. He reached out to touch the flowers in the pot on the windowsill, triggering a memory. He recalled a moment in the garden with Anita. She had confided in him, saying, I have a secret. Leaning closer, she whispered, It's something I can't tell anyone, not even you. So it's all right for you to keep one secret from me. Making a pact, Axion added, Okay, let's tell each other everything other than that one secret then. Anita agreed, saying, Okay. As Axion held the flower in his hand, he reflected. One of the secrets Anita told me about is that she can talk to spirits, even though she doesn't have divine powers. He pondered. Does that mean her sister is the same? As he immersed himself in his thoughts, there was a knock on the door. Granting permission, he calmly stated, Come in. The door slowly creaked open, revealing the figure of Sir Elmont and a man. Greeting him, he acknowledged, Lord Axion. Meeting his gaze, Axion inquired that man, What did you find out? Axion fixed his eyes on that man as the latter began his explanation. I've prepared a report. First of all, I will commence with what we've discovered about Arabella Renard. While holding a document, Sir Elmont explained. According to the doctor, it is likely that Arabella Renard is overly sensitive to divine power. Axion inquired, Does she possess divine power herself? He replied, No. Upon hearing this, Axion pondered. She won't be of any use to the imperial family then, which means I won't have to intervene if they choose her to marry the prince. Lost in thought, he suddenly asked, Who will be leading the Saint's Day ceremony this year? Sir Elmont replied, It will be Count Rom's second son for now. He continued, But I don't believe the Renards will stay passive and allow that to happen. The Marchioness planned to introduce Arabella to high society on that day. Lost in thought, Axion replied, So I'm sure she's eager for Arabella to take the spotlight by leading the ceremony. Recalling the history of Saint's Day, Axion explained, Saint's Day. The Empire, founded with the aid of a spirit animal, holds a sacred ceremony every 3 years. While reminiscing about the traditional Saint's Day, he mused, The children of each noble family take turns leading this ceremony, but the imperial family has an ulterior motive for holding it. Recalling the true purpose of Saint's Day, he added, The real purpose of this ceremony is to identify anyone with divine powers and monitor whether someone outside of the imperial family's lineage possesses such powers. While holding a document, the man said, This year's ceremony is especially important to the Renards. After pondering for a while, Sir Elmont exclaimed, Every time the ceremony was held in the past, they refused to participate, stating that they wouldn't send their second child when their first child hadn't had the chance. The man added to Sir Elmont's statement, Now that their first daughter is back, they will definitely participate. Axion inquired, Is there any chance of Arabella fainting during the ceremony? The man glanced at the document and explained, Unless someone gets injured and requires healing by one of the priests, the likelihood of her fainting is low. He continued, However, if that does occur, people may become aware of her sensitivity. Sir Elmont added while contemplating, Then, the imperial family will desire her to marry the prince to utilize her ability to detect divine powers. The man remarked, I'm sure the Renards will be fearful that they might suffer a fate similar to the Empress's family. Axion listened carefully and was lost in thought. Then he recalled what Arabella nervously said to him. I want her to be happy. Pondering, Axion considered. Anita rarely allows people to get close to her. Given that she barely acknowledges her sister, I'm certain the two of them aren't close. Glancing at the man, he mused. Thus, the fact that Arabella expressed that sentiment despite their lack of closeness might indicate that she genuinely cares about Anita. In an inquiring tone, Vance said, Lord Axion? What are you thinking about? Axion addressed him. Vance. Vance replied, Yes, my lord. Axion continued his response. I've decided to participate in this year's Saint's Day ceremony. Papers were scattered all over the bed. Anita, lying on the bed, holding a few documents, pondered. They keep assigning me tasks even though I'm confined here. With a gentle smile, she mused. Ha! Has he still not reviewed this document himself, or perhaps he didn't realize it got mixed in with the other paperwork? She picked up a paper from the scattered documents on the bed and thought, It's evidence of tax evasion. With her hand on her head, lying on the bed, she murmured, Ha! It was exactly 1 year ago when I started noticing something was amiss. Startled, lost in thought while examining the paper, she mused. The Renards have been making donations to the temple every year. However, the donation amount didn't match last year, and a significant sum of money was unaccounted for. Confused, she decided to confront the issue herself. Recalling the moment, she remembered going to Marquis Renard's office and knocking on the door. When she tried to address her concerns to her father, he became furious and slapped her while shouting, Know your place! This is none of your business! Anita stumbled back, glaring at her father. Reflecting on the encounter, she thought, He was definitely hiding something. Anita pondered. There was no doubt he was keeping a separate ledger, but after I questioned him, the Marquis made sure to handle the bookkeeping himself. Recalling the situation, she mused. And he didn't allow me access to any of it. While lying among the scattered papers, she thought. Until now, that is. Now the evidence is in my hands once more. Considering Arabella's sudden return, she speculated. The reason the Renards have been secretly donating such vast sums of money to the temple must be because of the torch of Ariadne, a holy relic that can locate anyone, no matter where they are. That must be how they found Arabella. Flapping the paper in her hand, she mused. 4 more months until the periodic tax audit. Lost in deep contemplation, Anita reflected. The Marquis's tax evasion will undoubtedly be uncovered this time, and the Imperial Palace won't turn a blind eye to it. Determinedly, she stated. Despite that, I have no intention of fixing this for them. While lying down, she thought. They won't be able to raise taxes in the territory to pay their fines anyway. They can only pay those fines using their private property. With a smile on her face, she mused. Good. That means the residents of the Renard family's territory won't be affected by any of this for the next 10 years. Thinking about the Marquis and Marchioness, she pondered. Of course, the Marquis and Marchioness will be left destitute and unable to afford their staff. Lying on the bed, she turned while thinking. But that's none of my concern. A few days later at the Renard Manor, Arabella was adorned in a beautiful royal gown. Her mother complimented her, saying, Goodness, you look beautiful, Bella, she added. It's as if that dress was made to be worn by you. Arabella replied graciously. It's thanks to everyone helping me look nice. Her father interrupted their conversation and asked, Bella, you remember everything we told you earlier, don't you? Advising her, he added, You have to be especially mindful of the way you present yourself in front of the Empress. Listening carefully to her father, Arabella replied, Yes, father. Holding her gown carefully, she descended the stairs alongside her mother. Upon seeing Anita, Arabella paused, amazed, and exclaimed, Oh, Anita! Anita was adorned in a stunning purple gown. Arabella rushed towards her and complimented her. You got ready sooner than I did. You look so pretty. Anita replied nonchalantly, Sure. Upon receiving compliments from Arabella, Anita mused. It's obvious they put in so much effort to make me look nice so the Empress would notice me. Glaring at Anita, her mother interjected. Anita, you need to put on some more powder. Arabella, defending Anita, said. She looks great already, though. Anita's skin is so clear and bright to begin with. However, her mother insisted. We all need to look our best for the Empress. Standing on the stairs, Marquis Renard observed them. A maid approached Anita and said, Please follow me, my lady. Anita interrupted, asserting, No. I'm fine. Looking at her mother, Anita asserted, I am ready to go, so there's no need to wait any longer. Let's go, Arabella. Lady Renard flinched and yelled, Hold on. Arabella turned back, her expression questioning. Lady Renard hesitated and couldn't utter anything. Anita smirked, looking at her father who stood behind her mother. Why are you so nervous? Maybe you shouldn't have done something you need to hide, father. Her father addressed Anita. I have something to discuss with you, Anita. Come with me. Anita firmly replied. I don't know what this is about, but I have nothing to discuss with you, father. After a moment of contemplation, she added, Oh, don't tell me. Is this about my cheek? Her father erupted. Anita! Witnessing this, Arabella flinched, nervously asking, What's wrong, father? Why would you shout at? Her mother hurried towards her, interjecting, Don't mind them, Bella. Bella responded. But, addressing Anita, her father demanded, Stop scaring Bella and follow me. Undeterred, Anita reiterated, Like I said, I have nothing to discuss with you, father. Enraged, her father exclaimed, You little. Meanwhile, 2 maids overheard them and whispered to each other, It's Lady Anita again. She's making everyone uncomfortable. The other maid replied, Maybe she's doing it on purpose to scare Lady Bella. Arabella overheard the maid murmuring, I bet she's doing this out of spite because Lady Bella's dress is prettier. Arabella approached them and said, Father is the one who started it. Anita isn't to blame. The maid responded. You are so kind, Lady Bella. If only Lady Anita was half as sweet as you. Arabella mused to herself. It doesn't make sense. I know Anita is a kind person. However, whenever I say so, everyone tells me she's not. Deep in thought, Arabella continued. Our loving parents, the kind maids, everyone at Renard Manor says the same thing. Arabella mused. If Anita really was as terrible as they say, she never would have run to get a doctor when I fainted. Reflecting on Anita's actions, she recalled what the butler told her. And the butler told me that Anita saved the Archduchess from drowning when she was only 9 years old. Lost in her thoughts, Anita pondered. So why does everyone say that Anita is a bad person even though she always helps people? Lady Renard addressed Arabella and said, Arabella, go and get in the carriage. We have to talk to Anita first. Squeezing Anita's hand, Arabella replied, No. Gazing at her, her mother said, Bella? Arabella, with a look of grief on her face, asked, Is it something you don't want me to hear? When Lady Renard instructed Arabella to take a seat in the carriage for a discussion with Anita, Arabella, wearing a sorrowful expression, questioned, Is it something you don't want me to hear? Meanwhile, Anita observed them with a curious gaze. Lady Renard attempted to clarify to Arabella. We just think you should go and sit in the carriage to rest your feet. Directing her words at Arabella, she inquired, Why are you doing this, Arabella? However, Arabella remained resolute, standing her ground. Observing Arabella's determination, Anita contemplated the possibility of her being a supportive sister. Don't you tell me you. But then dismissed the notion, affirming, No, of course not. In the end, she's just like our parents. Lady Renard sought to explain further, stuttering, That's not what we just. Before being interrupted by Marquis Renard, who expressed concern. We're just worried that you'll tire yourself out before you even get to meet the Empress. You get exhausted so easily, Bella. Attempting to reason with Arabella, her mother suggested. So why don't you leave Anita behind for a moment and get in the carriage dash? However, Arabella interjected firmly. No, she emphasized. We can't be late meeting the Empress. We should get going. As Arabella turned, she urged Anita. Let's go, Anita. Gently squeezing her hand as they began to walk, Anita, taken aback by Arabella's unexpected care, mused to herself. How strange. A carriage arrived at the Renard Manor, and Arabella's mother instructed her, emphasizing. This is how you greet Her Majesty, Arabella. Observing the knight, Anita speculated. He seems disgusted by the mere thought of coming in contact with me. Noting the frown on his face as he glanced at her. Lost in thought, Anita, while gazing at the prince, pondered. But he's not one of our usual knights. Where have I seen him before? Suddenly recalling the day when Arabella arrived, she realized. Right. He was one of the knights who brought Arabella back from the slums. The knight gestured for Anita to approach and inquired. What are you waiting for? As they walked together, Anita couldn't help but wonder. He must be a newer recruit if he's never guarded us before, so why did he get assigned to us? He reached out his hand towards her, urging. Come on. Hurry up, will you? Observing him, Anita couldn't shake the feeling and mused. Something's off about this. When he attempted to grab her hand, Anita swiftly stomped on his foot, causing him to exclaim in pain. Arg! With a stern glare, he began. You should have taken my hand if you can't even. But Anita cut him off, asserting. Hey! She then commanded. Recite the knight's code of chivalry for me. He retorted promptly. Why would I do that? Meeting his gaze with a glare, Anita asserted. Because you don't seem to know it. I can't believe a knight of the Renard family lacks such basic knowledge. He met her glare and countered. Well, I can't believe someone like you is part of the Renard family. Despite her rising anger, Anita restrained herself and inquired. What do you mean? With a steely gaze, he accused. You torment Lady Arabella and... Lady Renard turned and interjected sharply. How dare you speak to Anita like that? Anita glared at her mother. Her mother questioned incredulously. Anita? Her mother attempted to clarify. It wasn't me. Trust me. Reflecting on her mother's reaction, Anita deduced. Judging by her reaction, I was right. For whatever reason, Mother has been spreading false rumors about me on purpose and is trying to hide her involvement. Lady Renard endeavored to clear the misunderstanding. Anita, with a smile playing on her lips, pondered. I suppose I'll have to find out why she did this. With a thoughtful expression, she muttered. Of course, Mother. Coming to a decision, Anita declared. I believe you. As she began to move away, Anita remarked to her mother. How strange, though. Why would a knight who has never even met me act like that? Her mother attempted to respond, stuttering. Well. Heading towards the stairs, Anita turned back to her mother and remarked. Oh, those maids I fired the other day must have been spreading rumors. Her mother nodded, saying, Yes, that must be it. Anita expressed. I'm glad I fired them, then. Her mother nodded in agreement, adding, Yes, I am too. Casting a scrutinizing glance at the knight, Anita speculated. Or maybe, instead of focusing on his training, he was busy listening in on conversations at the manor. The knight, simmering with anger, muttered. It's not unusual for someone to hate me, but to be so obvious about it. Pausing in her steps, Anita reflected. It feels different from the hate I'm used to. Turning to her mother, Anita declared. Mother, I never want to see that knight's face ever again. Seeking reassurance, she continued. Father will agree to ban him from guard duty when he hears about this, won't he? Her mother responded immediately. Of course he will. Should we send him back to our territory? Catching her mother's gaze, Anita shook her head with a smile and said, No, that would be too much. As they reached Emperor's Manor, moving inward, Anita suggested, Let's go inside to see Her Majesty. They proceeded to knock at the door, accompanied by a maid. Upon entering, the maid greeted, Your Majesty, Marchioness Renard is here with her oldest daughter and her youngest daughter. After receiving permission to enter, they walked through the grand hall. Offering her salutations, Anita respectfully said, Greetings, Your Majesty. Arabella, with a bow, added, Greetings, Your Majesty. And my name is Arabella Renard. Observing Arabella's nervous demeanor, Anita couldn't help but muse. Is she nervous? I guess that makes sense. In response, the Empress commanded, Raise your heads. It was none other than the Empress herself, known for her lack of expression and cold demeanor. Although her whole family was tragically destroyed, she never let it affect her. Even when people mock her with rumors about how she never smiles for fear of wrinkles, she never bats a single eyelash. Observing Arabella's apprehension, Anita reasoned. Arabella has never seen the Empress, so no wonder she's nervous. The Empress acknowledged. I finally get to meet you. Startled by the attention, Arabella flinched. The Empress requested, Would Marchioness Renard and her youngest daughter step outside for a moment? This unexpected request left Arabella in shock. Lady Renard attempted to explain. Your Majesty, Arabella is still not used to dash. However, the Empress interrupted, questioning Lady Renard. Is your eldest daughter not 19 years old now? Is she still too immature to speak without someone at her side? Feeling the weight of the situation, Lady Renard knelt down and apologized. I apologize, Your Majesty. That is not what I meant. In response, the Empress raised her voice, admonishing, Then mind your words next time. Standing tall, she directed her attention, demanding, Why are you still here? With a stern glare, she reiterated, I told you all to leave except Arabella Renard. Hearing this, Arabella started trembling. Anita and her mother were seated in the grandeur of the Emperor's manor, partaking in tea, their nerves betraying them amidst the wait, particularly Lady Renard, whose trembling hands betrayed her concern for Arabella. In a sudden surge of determination, Anita rose from her seat, prompting her mother's sharp inquiry. Where do you think you're going? The Empress may want to see you. Unfazed by her mother's admonition, Anita countered. Why would she want to see me when she's preoccupied with Arabella? As Anita advanced towards the door, her mother's voice rang out. You never know, so stay put. To which Anita defiantly replied, No. Lady Renard's tone escalated into a yell. Anita. But Anita remained resolute, asserting, I'm sure a maid will come get me if Her Majesty wishes to see me. Attempting to assert authority, Lady Renard implored Anita, saying, Still you need to stay here so you are ready to dash. Anita paused and her interruption hung in the air, a challenge to her mother's intentions. What? Are you that eager to offer me as a marriage candidate for the prince? Stunned by Anita's perceptiveness, Lady Renard faltered, her response stuttered. What are you talking about? Anita, with a resigned sigh, questioned her mother's sensitivity. If not, I can't understand why you're being so touchy. As she made her exit, a maid bowed respectfully before her. While striding away, Anita reflected. The only reason I am so confident is because I know for a fact that the Empress would never call for me. With a soft creak, Anita eased the door open, continuing her musings. There is a certain animosity between the Empress and the Archduchess Lacade after all. Meanwhile, Lady Renard's persistent admonitions echoed from behind. You must return at once when a maid comes to get you. Do you understand? Anita met her mother's glare with a defiant gaze, slamming the door behind her as she departed. Entering a picturesque garden bursting with vibrant blooms, Anita found herself lost in contemplation. I don't feel like taking a walk, but I might as well. Surveying the flora, her mind wandered to the Empress's current conversation with Arabella. I wonder what the Empress is telling Arabella right now. Recalling the Empress's demeanor, Anita reflected. It felt like she was waiting for her from the start. I thought she talked to me about marrying the prince, so this is unexpected. Even the Marchioness was surprised. It seemed she expected the Empress to speak with her rather than Arabella. Amidst the garden's rustling foliage, Anita halted, detecting footsteps nearby. Turning, she observed a young boy with light-colored eyes, prompting her to wonder. Is something wrong with his eyes? Why is he out here all by himself? As the boy staggered, Anita swiftly caught him, eliciting a gasp of gratitude from him. Thank you? Feeling his grip on her arm, Anita contemplated. Should I tell him to let go of me so I can help him? Before she could act, the boy released her, apologizing hesitantly. I'm sorry. The boy was hesitant to ask something. Anita observed his hesitation, pondering. Why is he just standing there? Does he have something to say to me? Suddenly, the boy rushed back, leaving Anita with lingering questions swirling in her mind. Meanwhile, Axion, accompanied by Sir Elmont and Vance, arrived at the Emperor's manor. After inquiring about the prince, Sir Elmont informed Axion. According to a servant, His Highness is not in his room. Expressing concern, Sir Elmont continued. This isn't the first time he's been late to a meeting with you, but isn't this too much? Vance chimed in. Oh, also, I heard that the oldest daughter of the Renard family is here to finally greet Her Majesty. After a moment of reflection, Axion acknowledged. Right, I forgot about that. Contemplating how the Renards located Arabella, Axion pondered. The torch of Ariadne is a holy relic that confirms a person's parentage. This holy relic is said to belong to a mysterious individual. The Renards were only able to get their hands on it to find Arabella, all thanks to the Empress. Seated on a chair, Axion drifted into his thoughts, remarking, It's been a whole month since they found their oldest daughter. The Empress must not be happy that it took them so long to bring her here. After contemplation, Vance mumbled, That probably means Lady Anita is here, too, since the Marchioness has plans for her. Axion smiled in agreement, acknowledging Vance's observation and said, You're right. Sir Elmont interjected once more. My lord, the prince is making you wait for far too long. Vance grumbled. Considering his long absence, perhaps the Empress called for him. Sir Elmont nodded in agreement, adding, That means you might have a chance to run into Lady Anita. Axion contemplated for a moment, but refrained from speaking, opting instead to make his way towards the door. Surprised by his departure, Sir Elmont inquired, "Where are you going, my lord?" While Vance expressed his concerns. "His Highness might be back soon." As Axion exited, he turned back with a reassuring smile, stating, "I won't be gone for long." Finding his way to the garden where Anita stood lost in thought, Axion called out, "Anita!" Anita, taken aback by Axion's sudden appearance, inquired, "What brings you to the Imperial Palace, Lord Axion?" Grasping Anita's hand, Axion replied, "I'm here to see the prince." "What about you?" Meeting his gaze, Anita explained, "I'm here with Arabella for an audience with Her Majesty. A maid might come get me at any moment." Curious, Axion asked, "Did you happen to run into the prince?" Anita pondered for a moment before responding, "HM? No." Relieved, Axion nodded. "I see." Anita asked, "If you're looking for His Highness, I could help you." Axion smiled in response and said, "No, it's fine." Sensing Anita's bruised face, Axion paused, his expression softened with concern as he gently placed his hands on her face, his tone now serious. "Anita, who did this to you?" Upon noticing the redness on Anita's face, Axion gently placed his hand on her cheek, his expression questioning. Recalling how he had searched through the garden for Anita, Axion's eyes rested upon her as he halted. "Anita," he began softly, "I felt relieved as soon as I saw you." With a tender gaze fixed upon Anita, Axion holding Anita continued, "I think I was nervous I might have found you with the prince." Staring at Anita's face, Axion's voice carried a note of sincerity. "I always believed we were friends." Reflecting on the day he had found Anita in tears, Axion confessed, "But it was strange. It feels like I've always liked you." His hand brushing gently against her cheek, Anita, taken aback, met Axion's gaze, questioning, "What do you mean?" Smiling warmly, Axion replied, his touch gentle as he caressed her hair, "I meant, who made you wait here? Is it the maid taking you to see the Empress?" Understanding the concern in Axion's eyes, Anita quickly responded, "Oh no, I came here on my own." Axion's grip tightened ever so slightly as he reassured her. "Then I'll take you there." Anita's smile was gentle as she declined, "No, it's fine. It's not far." As Anita withdrew her hand from his, Axion murmured softly, "Still." Axion clenched his jaw, deep in contemplation. "I'm sure the Marquis and Marchioness are to blame for that bruise," he muttered under his breath, his words heavy with accusation and suspicion. Lost in his own reverie, Axion continued, his voice a quiet murmur, "Until you leave the Renard family for good, I'll hold myself back," his resolve evident despite the turmoil within. Meanwhile, in the opulent confines of a grand hall, Anita sat opposite her mother, each bearing their own emotions. Anita delicately clinked her cup of tea, a subtle gesture amid the charged atmosphere. Her mother, visibly tense, met her gaze with clenched fists, a silent storm brewing within her. As Anita sipped her tea, her thoughts wandered. "I guess the Empress isn't interested in seeing the Marchioness." A conclusion drawn amidst the unspoken tensions that hung in the air like heavy drapes. Suddenly, the quietude was shattered by the creak of the door, heralding the entrance of Arabella. "Anita dash," she began, her voice a mix of urgency and apprehension. Upon seeing Arabella, Anita's mother sprang to her feet, her previous demeanor replaced with frantic concern. "Arabella!" she exclaimed, rushing towards her daughter with open arms, the weight of worry evident in her every movement. Embracing Arabella tightly, her mother peppered her with questions, her words laden with worry and relief. "Are you all right? Did the Empress not call for me?" Each query a testament to a mother's instinctive need to protect and understand. Confusion etched Arabella's features as she stammered, "No, she said we may leave now," her response further fueling the already charged atmosphere. With a heavy heart, Miss Renard sighed. "I see. Let's go home then." her resignation palpable as she prepared to depart, her hopes dashed by the unexpected turn of events. Yet, as they made their way back accompanied by a maid, Miss Renard paused, a sudden realization striking her. "One moment. I would like to turn back and see Her Majesty," she declared. The maid responded, "You'll have to return another day to dash." In frustration, Miss Renard insisted, "I'm already here. Why can't I just see her?" Her words echoing the frustration and desperation that simmered beneath the surface. In a moment charged with frustration and realization, Anita cast a piercing glance back at her mother, her anger barely contained as she contemplated. "She seems embarrassed having to ask a maid for a favor." Her observation tinged with disdain at the perceived weakness. As Anita's gaze lingered on her mother, her mind raced with conjectures. "I guess she knows that she has to see the Empress now for her plan to work." Her thoughts reflecting a begrudging acknowledgement of the necessity behind her mother's actions. Turning her thoughts inward, Anita scrutinized her mother's motivations. What possessed her to push back this meeting for a whole month, anyway? Her inquiry tinged with a mix of curiosity and frustration at the seemingly inexplicable delay. With Arabella's presence prompting a sudden realization, Anita's expression shifted to one of alarm, her mind racing to connect the dots. "The Empress even lent her and the Marquis the torch of Ariadne," she murmured, the pieces of the puzzle beginning to fall into place. Suddenly, a flash of memory jolted Anita into action, her tone urgent as she exclaimed, "Don't tell me!" The pieces of a sinister scheme falling into place as she recalled snippets of her parents' conversation. Echoes of her father's words reverberated in her mind. "We've already made the most of her engagement." His cryptic statement now taking on a darker significance in light of recent events. In a fury of realization, Anita's thoughts coalesced into a damning accusation. The Archduchess helped them. How dare they try and break off my engagement to Axion when the Archduchess helped them find Arabella? Her indignation palpable as she grappled with the betrayal. Disillusionment clouding her features, Anita's disappointment boiled over into anger as she spat. How much lower are they willing to stoop? Her words a scathing indictment of her parents' deceit. Meanwhile, Miss Renard's patience worn thin, erupted in a command to the maid. "Take me to her now!" Her tone sharp with urgency, a reflection of the mounting tensions and the need for immediate action. The maid hesitated, her uncertainty palpable as she began. "But—" Sensing the tension rising, Arabella intervened, gently grasping her mother's arm in an effort to soothe her. "Please, mother. You're making her uncomfortable," she implored, her voice soft yet firm, a plea for understanding amidst the mounting discord. Undeterred, Anita's mother raised her voice, her frustration evident as she admonished Arabella. "Arabella, you are a Renard. A Renard doesn't have to accommodate any servant." Her words rang out with a mix of pride and stubbornness, a testament to her unwavering beliefs. Anita, observing the exchange with a heavy heart, let out a weary sigh, her disappointment evident as she watched the scene unfold before her. Suddenly, Miss Renard's resolve seemed to waver as she conceded. "Let's just go, Arabella." Her tone softer now, tempered by a hint of resignation. Arabella, torn between loyalty to her mother and her own sense of propriety, rushed to catch up, her voice trembling as she called out, Mother!" Outside, a carriage awaited them, ready to whisk them away from the tumultuous scene. As they made their way home, Arabella attempted to reason with her mother, gently explaining. Her Majesty wouldn't have been happy with an unannounced visit. Her mother listened, the weight of Arabella's words sinking in as she quietly admitted, "You're right." Meanwhile, Anita, a silent observer to the familial drama, paused, her thoughts lingering on the events of the evening. "Arabella?" she called out, breaking the silence. Responding promptly, Arabella turned her attention to Anita, her expression a mix of anticipation and curiosity. She inquired, awaiting Anita's next words. Later that night, as Anita settled into her room wearing a comfortable nightdress, a gentle knock echoed through the silence. With a click, she opened the door, revealing Arabella standing there with a warm smile. I'm glad you're still awake. Arabella greeted her, her demeanor radiant with genuine affection. With a polite request, Arabella asked, "Can I sleep with you here tonight, Anita?" Her tone earnest, seeking comfort in the familiarity of sisterhood amidst the turmoil of the day. Arabella approached Anita with a polite request, asking, "Can I sleep with you here tonight, Anita?" Anita looked at Arabella with a questioning gaze. Seeing Anita's confusion, Arabella hesitantly clarified, "Would you like to sleep together?" Anita simply replied, "Sure." Arabella beamed with joy upon hearing this. As they walked across the room, Anita instructed, "Sit down." Arabella nervously followed Anita. Suddenly, Anita grabbed Arabella's face, leaving Arabella stunned. Anita rubbed her fingers gently on Arabella's cheeks. Surprised, Arabella asked, "You knew?" Anita, worried, frowned while looking at Arabella's bruised face and said, "I did." Anita moved back, holding something, and inquired, "Did Her Majesty slap you across the face?" Seated behind her, Arabella replied, "Her Majesty is a good person." A sudden sadness appeared on her face as she continued, "But I must have displeased her with the way I spoke." Anita, looking back at Arabella inquisitively, asked, "What did you even say?" Arabella responded, "Anita, this time I wasn't just all talk." She glanced at her hands and gulped, "Losing a finger. I value you far more than that, Anita." Arabella recalled her encounter with the Empress. Trembling, she had said to the Empress, "Anita and Lord Axion will never break off their engagement." The Empress responded by slapping Arabella, who sat there shivering. Coldly, the Empress asked, "Even if I were to cut off one of your fingers?" Later, Anita and Arabella lay on the bed in the dark room. Arabella had fallen asleep. Watching her, Anita mused, "How surprising." Looking at the peacefully sleeping Arabella, Anita thought, "She finally fell asleep once I told her that even the Empress could never cut off a noble lady's finger." Turning to her side, Anita reflected, "It must have been a relief to hear. She's such a scaredy cat, and yet she tries to defy the Empress." Arabella suddenly opened her eyes and mused, "Anita, you're so strange." The next day, Axion was sitting in a grand office with a cup of tea in front of him. Sitting across from him was Khalid, the Empire's one and only prince. Khalid said, "So you just left yesterday?" Axion, looking at him, replied, "You failed to show up first, Your Highness." Khalid, bragging, said, "Yes, but you should have waited for me. Come on." Then, remembering something, Khalid continued, "Oh, by the way, I heard that your fiancé met with my mother yesterday, too." As Axion sat silently, Khalid, lost in his thoughts, murmured, I expected him to look bored like he always does." Noticing Axion's expression, Khalid mused, "What a surprise." Khalid smiled while reflecting. "Then again, he was like this when we were at school, too." Recalling their school days, Khalid mused, "Axion, who found even me annoying, didn't push away people trying to befriend him." Realizing something, Khalid continued, "I assumed it was because he was interested in making useful connections. However, in the end, it was all for Anita Renard." Suddenly, Khalid addressed Axion and said, "I can't believe you wanted to find friends for Lady Anita." While sipping tea, Axion glared at him. Khalid giggled and said, "What if she had become better friends with them than you?" Axion replied, "That would have never happened." Khalid retorted, "How do you know? Were you planning on getting in the way if they got too close? Why would I?" Axion smiled and said, "Why would I? It's impossible for anyone to get as close to Anita as I have." Hearing this, Khalid responded, "Is that so? Thank you again." Axion presented a stone to the prince. Looking at the stone, the prince said, "Thank you again." Holding the stone in his hand, Khalid continued, "I'm actually able to see the light when it's sunny outside now." Axion nodded his head in acknowledgement. Addressing Axion once more, the prince inquired, By the way, how is Her Grace, your mother? At this question, Axion looked directly at Khalid's face, triggering a flashback. For a long time, no one in the Empire had been born with proper divine powers. However, one day, the Archduchess gave birth to a successor with divine powers. For 10 years, the Emperor did nothing, yet his ultimate purpose was to eradicate the Archduchess and her son. The Emperor's plan was to make Axion despise his own powers. Khalid continued, "My mother still regrets letting His Majesty fool her into luring Her Grace into the lake." Axion replied calmly, "I'll let my mother know." The prince chuckled and added, "Also, please let her know that the future emperor will remember that progress was made thanks to Her Grace asking you to help." Meanwhile, Anita was hiding herself among the leaves and plants. She paused for a while and pondered. "I'm sure it will be happy to see me, even though I'm just here to ask a question." Suddenly, shouts began to echo around her. "Anita! Anita!" Again, there came a noise. "Anita!" Hearing the shout, Anita pondered. "I knew it." She then heard a magical voice. "It's been a whole month. I thought you'd forgotten about me. Why haven't you come to see me? I've never had to wait longer than 10 days to see you." Anita replied, "I've been busy." Seated in the bushes and lost in her thoughts, Anita heard the magical voice inquire, "What are you thinking about right now?" Anita gently asked, "Can you fix someone's sensitivity to divine power?" The magical voice responded, "That would be difficult. They just have to avoid going to the temple. But all they can do is heal, so maybe it's okay." The voice then asked, "Why? Do you know someone like that?" Lost in her thoughts, Anita asked back, "How did you know?" The spiritual voice explained, "We've had a lot of conversations, so I figured. Plus, I'm a great spirit, after all." Realizing something, Anita asked, "What's with that tone?" The spirit replied, "I didn't have anyone to talk to for a whole month, so I forgot how to talk naturally, okay?" Anita looked towards the bushes and said, "I'm sorry you had to wait so long." The spiritual voice asked, "So you'll come see me again, right?" Anita thought for a second and responded, "I can't promise anything, so don't wait for me." She then heard the magical voice behind her. "You're so cold, Anita. But I know that's how you show kindness." Anita turned and smiled, hearing, "Anyway, I'm so glad I met you, Anita." While Anita was seated among the bushes, carefully listening to the voice, the spirit said, "I really want to tell you my name someday." Anita, lost in her deep thoughts, began taking steps back from the lakeside. People around her were whispering to each other. As she walked back, Anita pondered, "Guess there'll be gossip about me being at the lake by myself." She then heard someone whispering, "Lady Anita Renard?" A lady seeing her said, "It's been a while." Anita pivoted her attention back to the lady in question, her gaze settling upon her as she struggled to recall her identity. "Lady Rachel Savi?" she ventured, her tone tinged with uncertainty as she attempted to place the familiar face before her. Delving into her recollection, Anita proceeded to elucidate on the enigmatic figure of Lady Rachel Savi. "There was rumor that Count Savi loved his second wife so much." Remembering the face of the Lady Savi, she continued, "that he treated his stepdaughter better than his own daughter. Although she was only the daughter of a count, Rachel had social skills that kept her well connected." Reflecting on her personal encounters with Lady Savi, Anita said, "However, whenever she was with me, she dropped her perfect facade. One time," Anita began, her words laced with reminiscence as she recounted a particular exchange. "I asked her." Seated across from Lady Savi, Anita broached a probing question, her inquiry laden with significance. "Lady Savi, do you consider me your friend?" she inquired, observing the visible surprise that flickered across her companion's features. Drawing from the wisdom of literature, Anita cited a poignant maxim. "A friend is someone you can be your true self in front of." With a measured explanation, she elucidated, "It was because of something I read in a book, but..." However, the tranquility of the moment shattered as Lady Savi's composure faltered. Her cheeks flushed with indignation as she sharply retorted, Excuse me?" Undeterred by the abrupt outburst, Anita persisted, her gaze unwavering as she recounted the visceral reaction that her question elicited. "It made Rachel very angry," she acknowledged, her voice tempered with understanding. In the heat of the moment, Rachel's anger flared, her words cutting through the air like a sharpened blade. "Of course not!" she exclaimed vehemently. She yelled again. "It would be best for you not to be so arrogant." With a composed demeanor, Anita absorbed the brunt of Rachel's ire, acknowledging the rebuke with a simple yet resolute response. "All right," she acquiesced, her words a tacit acknowledgement of the tension that hung palpably in the air. Anita persisted in her inquiry, her curiosity unabated despite the tense exchange that had transpired moments earlier. "Even after that," she mused aloud, her voice tinged with a note of perplexity, "I could never figure out why she was always so irritable around me." Lady Savi, seizing the opportunity to assert her dominance, interjected with a smirk, her tone laced with thinly veiled condescension. "Did the Renards stop supporting you?" she quipped, her words laden with implications of social standing and influence. Standing before Anita, Lady Savi cast a critical eye over her attire, her demeanor dripping with haughty arrogance. "Your outfit is just so simple," she remarked casually, her tone dismissive as she sought to underscore the perceived disparity in their sartorial choices. As Anita made a move to depart, Lady Savi's hand shot out, halting her in her tracks. "Wait!" she commanded, her tone betraying a sudden change in demeanor as she recalled something of import. "Oh my, really?" Lady Savi exclaimed, her expression a mask of feigned surprise as she turned to address those around her, her voice carrying with it an air of affected nonchalance. "I'm sorry, I have something to discuss with my friend," she announced, her words punctuated by a teasing jibe from one of her companions. Undeterred by the playful banter, Lady Savi linked her arm with Anita's, a smug smile playing across her lips as she reveled in the opportunity to flaunt their perceived camaraderie. "Let's keep walking with our arms linked, Lady Anita," she suggested, her tone dripping with self-satisfaction. "I feel like flaunting our relationship right now," Lady Savi continued, her words tinged with a hint of malice as she cast a disdainful glance towards the other young ladies in their midst. As they strolled leisurely among the lush foliage that bordered the tranquil lake, Lady Savi suddenly pivoted the conversation, her tone taking on a more conciliatory note. "Why don't I buy you a dress to thank you?" she offered, her gesture laden with implications of gratitude and reconciliation. However, Anita politely declined the offer, citing prior commitments with a gentle yet firm refusal. "No, thank you. I have somewhere to be," she responded, her words tinged with a note of finality. Undeterred by Anita's rebuff, Lady Savi pressed further, her curiosity piqued by the absence of Anita's entourage. "But where are your knights and maids? And what about your carriage?" she inquired, her tone betraying a hint of incredulity. Anita, however, remained resolute in her silence, offering no further explanation for her solitary presence. "I don't feel like answering that," she stated simply, her words a tacit rebuke to Lady Savi's probing inquiries. Seizing upon the opportunity to settle a perceived debt, Lady Savi paused, her expression unreadable as she contemplated her next move. "Since it doesn't seem like you'll ever come to see me, I'll settle my debt right now," she declared, her words laden with implications that stirred Anita's curiosity. As Anita met her gaze with a questioning expression, her mind raced with speculation. Grand Marchioness Oakland knew about the Renard family's oldest daughter, she mused to herself, piecing together the fragments of information that hinted at a deeper connection between their respective social circles. "It's something every noble knew about, so there's no doubt she would have known as well," Anita concluded, her thoughts swirling with unanswered questions as she sought to unravel the mysteries that lay at the heart of their enigmatic encounter. Anita continued, "She's the older sister of Marquis Renard, after all." Lady Savi shrugged and remarked, "The Saints' Day Eve ball will be held soon. Maybe I'll see you there? Anita paused thoughtfully. It sounds like she is implying the Grand Marchioness knew something else. Anita glanced towards Lady Savi and pondered. Is she trying to warn me about something? Upon returning to the manor, Anita was accompanied by Phillips. As she entered, she turned towards him and inquired, What is it? Phillips respectfully responded, The Marchioness was asking about your whereabouts. Where were you today, my lady? Anita began walking towards her room, with Phillips standing behind her, awaiting her response. Anita replied while continuing her stride. Lake Alkenti. She ascended the stairs, but suddenly heard Arabella's voice. You're home late, Anita. Arabella questioned. Where have you been? Anita looked towards Arabella and inquired. Why do you ask? Arabella hesitated briefly before responding. And no reason. I was just a little worried. Anita clenched her jaw, her thoughts swirling. Don't be curious about where I've been, Arabella. I went to the slums where you used to live. To see your parents and your injured sister. I wanted to compensate them with my own money. She recalled vividly the visit to Arabella's old house, the encounter with her family, and the urge to right the injustices she perceived. Because based on his ledger, I knew that the Marquis had no intention of giving them any money. The memory of the incident where Arabella's sister was injured flashed in Anita's mind. One of the Renard knights pushed your sister for calling you by your old name, and she even broke her leg. Despite the gravity of the situation, Anita found herself conflicted. She remembered the tender question from Arabella's mother. Is Lady Arabella doing well? Anita's heart softened at the memory. Your mother still loves you. I've never been loved like that. The weight of her actions pressed heavily upon her. Anita turned her gaze towards Arabella, grappling with her emotions. Out of pity for your old family, I can't tell you where I've been today, Arabella. With a heavy heart, she ascended the stairs, addressing Arabella. Why would you be worried? Arabella turned, confusion evident on her face. Huh! As Arabella approached, attempting to clarify her intentions, Anita listened attentively. Anita, I really didn't mean anything by it. I just have something I want to do with you, but you seem so busy. Anita sighed softly, sensing the weight of Arabella's unspoken request. It'll be Saint's Day soon. It might be too late to get a dress made, but there's still jewelry. Anita, sensing Arabella's underlying desire, relented. Fine. Arabella, still puzzled, echoed. Huh! Anita clarified, her tone resigned. If you're implying that you want to go shopping. Arabella beamed with joy, her excitement palpable. Why, yes, I am. The next day, a carriage arrived to transport Anita to the Lacade Manor. Stepping out of the carriage as it reached the Lacade Manor, Anita was greeted by Axion, who offered his hand. How was the journey here? He inquired. Anita replied with a simple, It was fine. Her thoughts drifting momentarily. It's already been 7 years since I started having afternoon tea with the Archduchess a couple of times a month. As they made their way towards the manor, Axion posed a question. When will you ride your carriage all the way to the front doors of Lacade Manor? Anita paused, contemplating his words. Her Grace might have given me permission, but that's only because I'm engaged to her son. It's a privilege I was only given because I'm your fiancé. Suddenly, Anita turned towards Axion and interjected. Oh right, Arabella is fine now. Axion, perplexed, murmured. Anita clarified. She fainted the last time, remember? Axion's smile widened as he recalled the incident. I'm glad to hear that. Anita reassured him. The doctor must have told you as much, but it wasn't anything contagious, so don't worry. You must have been shocked. I'm sorry I didn't let you know earlier. Halting in his steps, Axion posed a question that caught Anita off guard. What about you? Anita turned back at his sudden inquiry, her brow furrowing. Me? Axion, with a gentle gaze, reiterated. Yes, you, Anita. Meeting his gaze, Anita felt a surge of emotions. Are you all right? he asked softly. Anita searched his eyes for a moment before responding. Why do you ask? Her mind swirled with questions as she pondered his concern. Do I not look all right to you? Axion and Anita stood in the middle of the garden, silently gazing at each other. The air was filled with an unspoken tension as Anita responded to Axion's question, saying softly, I'm fine. Seeking to clarify her response, Anita added, I've never been sick. Axion listened intently to Anita, his concern evident. Their moment of conversation was interrupted by a voice calling out, Lord Axion! Both Axion and Anita turned towards the source of the voice. There stood Madame Grace, the head maid and Axion's aide, her presence commanding attention. Anita smiled warmly at Axion and said, You don't need to stay with me, Axion. It looks like Madame Grace is here to take me to the Archduchess. Axion, his expression turning serious, looked deeply into Anita's eyes and responded, Don't give in so easily, Anita. Taken aback by his intensity, Anita asked, What? Axion, unwavering in his determination, questioned her further. What must I do so you will act the way you want to? Before Anita could gather her thoughts to reply, Axion posed another question, his tone both earnest and gentle. Also, may I escort you to the Saint's Day Eve ball? Anita's surprise was palpable, her mind racing with the implications of Axion's words. The garden, once a serene backdrop, now seemed charged with the weight of their conversation. Axion's questions hung in the air, awaiting Anita's response, as Madame Grace stood by, witnessing the unfolding drama with quiet anticipation. Anita was taken aback by Axion's sudden questions, causing her to reflect inwardly. Why is he asking me this so suddenly? Nervously, she fidgeted with her gown, her thoughts racing. Although there are less than 3 months until I leave the Renards, this still remains true. Blushing slightly, Anita replied while thinking, You are the only person I want as my escort to any balls I attend. Axion listened to Anita intently, his gaze never wavering. Her heartfelt answer brought a smile to his face, and he giggled softly. As Anita started walking inward with Madame Grace, the head maid, she addressed her respectfully. Have you been well, my lady? Anita responded simply, I have. Madame Grace continued, her tone conversational. Oh, your birthday is coming up, isn't it? Is there anything you might like? Their exchange was interrupted by a sudden shout. Madame Grace! Madame Grace paused, turning towards the voice with a mix of curiosity and concern. Ella? Why are you shouting? She inquired. Ella, with urgency in her voice, replied, I have an urgent message for you. The tension was palpable as Madame Grace listened attentively. Abruptly, she bowed towards Anita and said, I apologize, my lady. Puzzled, Anita asked, What is it? With her head still bowed, Madame Grace explained, It seems I have forgotten that Her Grace told me she would not have time for tea today. Anita was shocked by this revelation and repeated, Her Grace said that? Madame Grace remained in her bow, clearly distressed by her mistake. Anita, maintaining her composure, nodded and said, I understand. Internally, Anita mused. Is it a political issue? Arabella is the one who will become head of the family, after all. As the implications of the day's events settled, Anita's thoughts drifted to the political complexities and familial responsibilities that surrounded her. The garden, once a place of tranquility, now felt like the epicenter of her contemplations and future uncertainties. Anita recalled Axion's recent words. Don't give in so easily, Anita. She frowned, reflecting on his statement. I understand that, but I want to hear it for myself. She mused. Determined, Anita moved hastily towards the door. Madame Grace called after her. Wait, my lady! But Anita was resolute. She grabbed the door handle with a firm grip and swung it open, striding into the Archduchess's room with both maids following closely behind. The Archduchess, noticing Anita's sudden entrance, looked up from her bed and said, Anita? Anita quickly took a seat in the chair beside the bed, her demeanor repentant. Please forgive my rudeness. she implored. The Archduchess smiled gently and replied, "It's all right." However, the Archduchess's condition was evident as she began coughing hard. Concerned, Anita asked, "How long has it been? And what is the disease called?" The Archduchess chuckled softly, wiping her mouth with a handkerchief. "Ha, nothing gets past you, does it?" she remarked before explaining. "The doctors are not sure either." Anita, her worry growing, continued, "What about His Holiness or His Majesty?" Realizing the audacity of her question, Anita quickly regretted it. "Oh no, how dare I ask such a thing?" she thought to herself. Her mind raced with the political implications. Both of them are eager for Her Grace to die. The temple would jump at the chance to step in as Axion's guardian, since he has divine powers, and the Emperor has always been wary of the Lackade family. The weight of the situation pressed heavily on Anita. Anita sat nervously, her heart pounding from her previous words. Sensing her discomfort, the Archduchess spoke gently. "It's all right." Anita glanced at the Archduchess, who continued to reassure her. "You saved me from the lake, remember?" The Archduchess smiled warmly at Anita, adding, "If you think about it, all these extra years have been a gift." Moved by the Archduchess's kindness, Anita mused internally. "Oh, I was wrong." She reflected on the care Arabella's mother had shown her, thinking, "I believed I had never been loved like Arabella, but—" Gathering her resolve, Anita addressed the Archduchess with determination. "I won't let this disease kill you, Your Grace." The Archduchess looked at Anita with a gentle smile, replying, "You are as kind as always, Anita." Reaching out, the Archduchess squeezed Anita's hand, drawing her closer. "Could you keep this a secret from Axion?" she asked softly. Anita hesitated, murmuring, "I don't think I can promise that." The Archduchess gazed at her thoughtfully. Just then, a carriage arrived at the Lackade Manor to fetch Anita. As Anita prepared to leave, she reflected on the situation, rattled by her thoughts. It's been 3 years since Axion began working as Her Grace's proxy, so her disease must have been developing for that long, at least, she pondered. While rinsing her mouth, the Archduchess observed Anita, who appeared lost in contemplation. Anita's mind raced. I'm sure she thought I was just being obstinate when I said I wouldn't let her die. While holding a piece of paper, Anita's thoughts churned. However, I don't make promises I don't intend to keep, she resolved silently. Looking at the paper, she spoke aloud to herself. I know what I have to look for first. Her gaze remained fixed on the document as she pondered. She asked me to keep this a secret from her son, but there is no doubt he already knows. Reading through the contents, Anita realized. All of this is top secret information from the Lackade family's archives. Axion must be looking into this already. As she immersed herself in the details, Anita's thoughts raced. If even the Lackade family couldn't locate these relics, it'll be far more difficult for me. But, she recalled the Archduchess's words, you are as kind as always, Anita. With renewed determination, Anita tightened her grip on the paper. Lost in her thoughts, she glanced at the Archduchess sitting on the bed, feeling a deep sense of purpose and responsibility. After bidding a final farewell to the Archduchess, Anita boarded the carriage to return home. As the carriage pulled away, she raised her hand to wave goodbye, her mind still occupied with the task ahead. Upon reaching her home, Anita stood before the mirror, contemplating her reflection. Nothing in my life has ever been easy, she mused. A few days later, Marquis Renard and his wife were in a hall around the table having tea. Miss Renard tried to share her worries. I just know that the Lackade family is trying to distance itself from us, she exclaimed, her voice tinged with anxiety. Marquis Renard looked at her with concern and attempted to console her. Don't you think you're blowing things out of proportion, dear? They have no reason to distance themselves from us after all these years. Miss Renard, lost in her thoughts, responded sadly. That's true, but... Marquis Renard, who was himself worried about the situation, mused aloud. However, I had the same worries when Lord Axion took over for his mother. but they gave us precious minerals from the north as if to reassure us. Miss Renard sighed and, holding her head, said, "This time, it feels different. Something was off during afternoon tea." Marquis Renard sought to confirm her observation. "Didn't you say it was just one person? Some baroness or something?" Miss Renard tried to explain further. "Usually, everyone is busy flattering me and trying to look good to me." She frowned, speculating on the cause of the change in behavior. "This is all because our audience with Her Majesty went so badly." Miss Renard recalled a recent visit from a lady of the court. The royal lady had said to her, "You must be so happy to have a daughter like Miss Anita." Sitting across the table while having tea, the lady continued, "I heard she's so smart that she's been helping your husband with his work ever since she was young. It's a shame that her talent was wasted because you never sent her to the academy." Marquis Renard, holding a cup of tea, attempted to offer some reassurance. "Maybe you're on edge because of the Saints' Day ceremony," he suggested. Miss Renard, visibly tense, held her head in her hands. The stress of the situation was palpable. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. The door clacked open, and a maid entered. The maid announced, "Lady Anita has returned." Marquis Renard turned to Miss Renard and asked, "Will you be talking to Anita?" Miss Renard shook her head and replied, "It would only ruin my mood even further." Miss Renard gritted her teeth in anger, recalling how Anita had enjoyed all the privileges that she believed should have been Arabella's. "Anita," she spat. "She took everything that Arabella should have had and enjoyed." She continued, her voice tinged with bitterness as she remembered Axion and Anita. "Even her good reputation. The way she looks down on others is disgusting." The words of the royal lady about Anita echoed in her mind. "You must be so happy to have a daughter like Miss Anita." Turning her attention to the maid, Miss Renard's fury was palpable. "Tell Anita to mind her behavior," she commanded sharply. "She keeps leaving the manor and going who knows where. Tell her to behave herself." The maid, bowing her head in submission, replied, "Yes, my lady." A carriage stopped outside a grand, historical building. Anita stepped out, her figure concealed by a flowing gown. As she descended from the carriage, her thoughts were preoccupied with a pressing concern. "For the last few days I've been thinking about how to find an item that could cure the Archduchess," she mused silently, determination etched on her face. Taking a glance at the imposing structure before her, Anita considered her options. "If it's something hard to come by," she thought, her pace quickening as she approached the building, "I'll need someone who can get their hands on rare items." Entering the building, Anita felt a sense of purpose. "That's when I thought of this place," she murmured. She knocked at the door while musing. "It's not much of a company yet, but I have someone I trust to run it." The door creaked open, revealing Vanessa, the head of the organization. "Master!" Vanessa exclaimed, her face lighting up with joy. Another lady appeared beside her, equally ecstatic to see Anita. Both women rushed towards Anita, enveloping her in a warm embrace. "Yay! What brings you here?" one of them yelled, her excitement palpable. Anita smiled, grateful for the warm welcome. "Let's talk inside," she suggested. Okay, the other woman agreed eagerly. Inside, they settled on the sofas around a table. Anita picked up a cup of tea, savoring its warmth. She glanced around, noticing the absence of the usual security presence. "Where did all the guards go? I didn't see any of them on my way in," she asked, curiosity tinged with concern. Vanessa sighed, a hint of frustration in her expression. "I was running low on money because of my last deal, so I let most of them go," she explained. Vanessa was in a bad condition, extremely nervous and fidgeting around. Holding a cup of tea in her hand, Anita asked, "Are you worried you might run the organization into the ground?" Vanessa nodded her head in reply, her anxiety evident. While taking a sip of tea, Anita said calmly, "Even if you do, it'll be my fault for failing to employ the right person. Besides, you're doing fine." Vanessa moved closer to Anita and asked joyfully, "Well, I suppose you are the one who appointed a beaten-up commoner from the road as the head?" Anita smiled warmly and mused. "No, you weren't just some commoner off the side of the road." Anita recalled her first time meeting Vanessa. She mused. Back when Arabella was still missing, the Renards would donate money to orphanages for show. She remembered the day vividly. Anita was following her parents when she suddenly heard a voice behind her. "Wait! I have something to tell you!" the voice called out. Anita mused. That's when I first met Vanessa. She saw a young girl, wearing worn-out clothes, rushing towards her, breathless. Anita turned towards her, intrigued by her urgency. Vanessa, puffing heavily, yelled, "The director is taking all the donations for himself." Anita was shocked upon hearing this revelation and pondered. Did the Renards fail to check where the money was going? It's strange enough that embezzlement within an orphanage went unnoticed, but... Anita asked Vanessa, "How did you find that out?" Vanessa replied hesitantly, "Well..." While scratching her cheeks, Vanessa continued, "I used to work for an information broker. But it wasn't all illegal work." Seated across from Vanessa, Anita smiled while pondering. "You were a fearless commoner, if anything. Plus, this organization really needed you." Vanessa tilted her head and asked, "What brings you here, by the way? You usually don't come to see me very often." Anita replied, looking at Vanessa's worn condition. "I'm going to request information from the Cloche Guild." Vanessa coughed, then shouted, "WH what?" Vanessa just casually replied, "All the big guilds have powerful people behind them. Cloche was formed 15 years ago, yet nobody knows who's behind it. That can only mean one thing." Gazing intently at Anita, she continued, "It's best not to get involved with a guild like that." Anita nodded her head and said, "It's fine." She mused silently. "Because I already know who the leader of Cloche is." A sparkling castle came into view. There was a knock on the door. It was Ned Rohim, Duke Viceroy's aide, at the door. Holding a pocket, he announced, "I shall be coming in, Your Grace." The door clacked open, revealing a grand interior. Seated on an opulent sofa inside was Duke Roderick Viceroy. He looked up and asked, "What is it?" Duke Roderick chuckled at Ned's urgency and added, "I'm assuming it's urgent." He pointed towards the pocket and said, "Show me." Ned opened the pocket, revealing a sparkling stone inside. Duke Roderick's eyes narrowed as he took in the sight of the stone. He held it in his hand, his expression thoughtful as he recalled the significance of the stone. He mused to himself, "Who dares?" Duke Roderick was seated on a sofa, visibly tense. Ned Rohim stood in front of him, holding a paper. Ned added, "Also," and while rustling the paper towards the Duke, he said, "This was in there as well." Duke Roderick took the paper from him and frowned as he read it. On the paper, there was a simple message. "I'm sorry." Duke Roderick crumpled the paper in his hand and, with a steely resolve, said, "Let me know as soon as you find out who it was." Ned Rohim, standing silently before him, replied, "Well, I can tell you now, actually. Apparently, she took off her hood and showed her face when she came in." Duke Roderick looked up, a mix of surprise and curiosity in his eyes, and asked, "Perhaps a noble, then? If she was recognizable?" Ned Rohim nodded and replied, "Yes, Your Grace." Ned recalled the moment when Anita had taken off her hood and revealed her identity. He said, "It was Anita Renard." The Duke's surprise was evident. He leaned forward, his curiosity piqued, and asked, "You mean the young lady that the Emperor speaks to at every banquet?" Ned affirmed, "Yes, that is correct. We thought she might have something to do with the Emperor, but that didn't seem to be the case." Duke Roderick chuckled, trying to confirm. "And you're sure it's not just someone who looks a lot like Anita Renard?" Ned replied confidently, while pointing towards his eyes. "There's no mistaking her. She had jet black hair and sharp eyes." Duke nodded, acknowledging Ned's description, and asked, "Right, and she has purple eyes." Ned, trying to recall her eye color, said, "Pardon? Well, I suppose they were purplish, yes." Duke smirked and said, "She got me." Duke repeated Ned's word. "Pardon?" Holding the stone in his hand and lost in thought, he said, "I knew she was clever back then as well, but who would have thought she would find the same vial?" As Duke Roderick reminisced about a particular night along Lake Alkenti, he recalled sitting by the lake when he heard someone approaching. Reflecting on the memory, he said, "I had no idea that I would run into such a young girl at Lake Alkenti in the middle of the night." He vividly remembered seeing a young girl, Anita, and had asked her, "You're 7? You look no older than 5. Anita had replied confidently, "Yes, I'm 7 years old." Duke Roderick, lost in his thoughts, murmured, "I was sure she had forgotten about me." He then recalled the promise he had made to her so many years ago, saying, "If you ever need me, I'll help you out one time. But to get my attention, you'll have to do something to really shock me." Reflecting on this, he added, "So I also assumed she had forgotten about the promise I made in passing back then." Listening intently, Ned asked with curiosity, "So you've met Anita Renard?" Duke nodded, his mind still partly in the past. "A long time ago," he confirmed. Ned hesitated for a moment before asking, "How many times have you run into her? I thought you only went to the temple." Duke smiled, a hint of mystery in his expression. "Those without secrets have no charm, don't you think?" Holding the stone and observing its glint, Duke Roderick mused aloud. "Maybe I'll attend this year's Saint's Day Eve ball." He chuckled and added, "I'd be a terrible adult if I were to crush a little girl's hopes and dreams." Ned, puzzled by the Duke's sudden decision and his cryptic remark, murmured, "Pardon?" The scene shifted to the day of the Saint's Day Eve ball. A maid was styling Anita's hair, her movements slow and somber. She sighed and commented, "It's too cruel." Anita, not understanding the maid's lament, asked, Anita was dressed in a plain golden gown, which contrasted sharply with her vibrant personality. The maid, looking at her with a mixture of pity and frustration, replied, "Red is your best color, but they gave you such a plain dress." Anita glanced at her reflection, her expression thoughtful. Noticing the jewelry, the maid added, "And Lady Renard said you may only wear pearls?" Anita tilted her head slightly and asked, "You think so?" The maid nodded and sighed again. "It looks like you're going to the temple rather than a ball." The maid began brushing Anita's hair as Anita pondered her current situation. "Come to think of it, last year I wore a red dress with golden roses embroidered on the skirt," she thought, standing in front of the mirror while the maid adjusted her dress. Anita continued reflecting. "Meanwhile, this year, they gave me this ivory dress decorated with only pearls." She touched her necklace and mused. "I suppose they want to make sure I don't stand out while still allowing me to attend." Her mind wandered to a past memory. Once, while wearing a pearl necklace, Arabella had remarked, "Anita, that's so pretty." Anita had taken off the necklace and, offering it to Arabella, said, "Then you should have it, Arabella." Arabella had been excited to see another necklace on the nearby table. Wait! Look, there's another one just like it with a different stone," she exclaimed, smiling as she held the necklace. "We should wear them to the Saint's Day Eve ball. What do you think?" Anita, touching her current necklace, felt a pang of disappointment. "Because of the Marchioness, I won't even be able to wear the necklace Arabella picked out," she thought. The maid opened the door and said to Anita, "It's time to go, my lady." Anita looked towards her and replied, "All right." She descended the stairs and found herself standing in front of Arabella in the grand hall. Arabella touched her own necklace and appeared shocked to see Anita wearing a different one. Fidgeting nervously, Arabella's reaction caught Anita's attention. Seeing Arabella's unease, Anita thought, "Is she disappointed that I'm not wearing the necklace?" Arabella whispered softly, "It's okay." Anita recalled her words, "It's okay," and pondered, What is she talking about? She continued guessing in her mind. Does she mean that it's okay we're not wearing matching necklaces? Or that she's glad I won't be punished for it? Arabella flinched as her mother, Lady Renard, rebuked Anita sharply. Did you really have to take so long to get dolled up and make us wait? She demanded. Anita glared at Lady Renard and retorted. Does it really look like I got dolled up? Arabella trembled nervously, caught in the tension between her mother and Anita. Sensing her daughter's discomfort, Lady Renard turned her attention to Arabella and asked, Why do you suddenly look so pale, dear? Arabella giggled nervously and replied, Oh, it's probably the nerves. Lady Renard touched Arabella's cheeks gently and reassured her. There's no need to be nervous. That's one thing I wish you had in common with Anita. Arabella beamed with excitement, her mother's words bolstering her confidence. Right? She asked, blushing with joy. I think so too. Anita sighed inwardly and mused. Here it comes. Miss Renard yelled furiously. Arabella, you're better than her in every way. Arabella tried to calm her mother down, her voice trembling. And mother, please stop. As she moved away from the confrontation, Arabella whispered softly, Sorry. Anita looked at her and mused. Oh, so she was whispering to me so I would know what she was thinking. Reflecting on Arabella's actions, Anita started to consider her intentions and feelings. The door creaked open, and all three of them began moving towards the exit. Miss Renard tried to say something. LL. Arabella, puzzled, wondered. Huh! At that moment, a carriage arrived at the Renard Manor. The door opened, and someone entered. Miss Renard, surprised, murmured, Lord Axion? Lord Axion, dressed in a royal outfit, stepped into the room. Seeing him, Anita was equally surprised and exclaimed, Lord Axion? Miss Renard, trying to compose herself, explained, He seems to be here to escort you. I suppose I'll allow it. Anita, still trying to understand the situation, said, Pardon? She mused silently. Why isn't she trying to stop me? In the serene beauty of the royal garden, Anita and Axion strolled as if they were a royal couple. The fragrant flowers and gentle breeze created a magical atmosphere around them. Suddenly, Anita broke the peaceful silence and turned to Axion, asking with curiosity, What brings you here so suddenly? Axion, with a charming smile, replied, I wanted to surprise you. As he spoke, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a beautiful, glinting pin. Anita's eyes widened in surprise as Axion carefully placed the pin in her hair. What are you doing? She asked, her voice a mixture of amusement and confusion. With a playful twinkle in his eyes, Axion continued combing her hair with his fingers and replied, A small bribe. So that you forgive me for coming without asking first. Arabella and Lady Renard were seated in the carriage, each lost in their own thoughts. Miss Renard, gritting her teeth, mused quietly, It seems like the Lacade family has no intention of cutting ties with us. Lady Renard, clenching her fists in anger, added, I wouldn't have had to let Anita go to the ball if I had known. I only allowed it not to anger the Lacade family. Arabella, noticing her mother's anger, fidgeted nervously, squeezing her hands as she contemplated the situation. Meanwhile, another carriage was stationed in the garden. Inside, Anita and Axion were seated. Anita couldn't help but continuously stare at Axion. Sensing her gaze, Axion remarked, You keep staring. Anita, nervously squeezing her dress, addressed him. Lord Axion? Axion responded, Yes? Gathering her courage, Anita asked, You already know about her Grace's illness, don't you? Axion, taken aback, replied affirmatively and then inquired, How did you know? Before she could answer, Axion explained, I'm certain my mother is still under the belief that I do not know. Anita, with a hint of admiration, responded, Nothing gets by you. Axion asked, Have you found the Tears of Ash yet? Anita replied, No. It seems to be traveling around as an antique, but I have yet to find it. Anita pondered about the tears of ash for the treatment of the Archduchess, recalling her condition. The tears of ash. One can extend a life using this relic, but it literally just keeps you alive. Reflecting on all the holy relics, Anita mused. However, it's the only holy relic that looks like it'll work right now. Axion informed her. I did manage to find out that it's somewhere within the Empire. Anita looked at him with a surprised gaze and replied, Really? She continued, I thought I'd look for it too. Anita then questioned him. What is it? Axion hesitated a bit, thinking carefully before he responded. I know you have your own way of doing things, but please promise me that you'll prioritize your safety and try to avoid danger. Anita nodded her head in agreement, indicating she understood and would heed his advice. They reached a historic palace, its grand facade reflecting centuries of heritage and power. Anita and Axion walked towards the ornate gates, their footsteps echoing softly on the cobblestone path. Suddenly they heard someone dashing towards them, calling out urgently, My lord! Startled, Anita and Axion turned to see a breathless messenger hurrying their way. The messenger, panting heavily, managed to say, His Highness, before taking a deep breath and continuing, has a message for you that he ordered me to deliver discreetly. The messenger handed over a sealed letter to Axion, who took it with a steady hand. While opening the letter, Axion instructed the messenger, Tell him I have received it. After a quick scan of the contents, Axion looked at Anita and said, Let's go, Anita. Both of them turned back towards the imposing gates and stepped into the palace. The grandeur of the interior was overwhelming, but what caught Anita's attention was a striking emblem on the wall. 2 snakes intertwined. She paused, her eyes widening in surprise and curiosity. Gazing at the emblem, Anita mused aloud. 2 snakes intertwined. Do they represent wisdom or deceitfulness? Anita, deep in thought, tried to draw a conclusion. Whichever one it is, they both fit our emperor quite well, she mused. She recalled an earlier encounter with the emperor, where his chilling demeanor and smirk left a lasting impression. I hear that you have quite a bit of control over the Renards, he had remarked, his gaze piercing. Then again, perhaps that is natural, given you are the daughter of one of the 5 noble houses. As Anita and Axion stood before the emblem of the intertwined snakes, Axion turned to Anita and asked, Does that bother you? Anita glanced at him, her expression serious. It's the symbol of the imperial family. Sure, she cautioned. Axion, realizing the importance, replied, Oh, right. The palace was bustling with people. Axion bowed respectfully towards an elegant lady and said, When we were younger, you were the one to teach me about social etiquette. Anita, observing the exchange, thought to herself, It's nice to be the teacher for a change. As they approached the entrance, 2 guards stood at attention. They bowed as Axion and Anita approached. Axion addressed them. We're late, so don't bother to announce us. One of the guards hesitated, murmuring, But... Axion interrupted firmly. I do not wish to interrupt anyone. The guard nodded, understanding the directive, and stepped aside to let them pass. The door clacked open, and both Anita and Axion entered the grand hall. The room was filled with people engaged in lively conversations, the elegant strains of violins adding a sophisticated backdrop. In one corner, glasses of drinks were neatly stacked, ready to be served to the guests. Anita glanced at Axion and asked, Did you tell them not to announce us to avoid being flocked by people? Axion nodded. Yes. Taking her hand and gently squeezing it, he added, I'm happy enough with just you at my side. Suddenly, a butler approached them, bowing respectfully. My lord, His Majesty is calling for you. Axion frowned at the interruption. Holding Anita's hand, he turned back and said, How unfortunate. I happen to be busy. Anita was taken aback by Axion's audacious response. Before she could react, a maid rushed towards them. One moment, my lord, she said urgently. Leaning in, she whispered something to Axion. With a resigned sigh, Axion replied. Fine. You may go ahead. Anita, observing the exchange, sensed the importance of the message. She looked at Axion, curiosity and concern mingling in her eyes. As they prepared to move, the atmosphere in the hall shifted subtly, the weight of the Emperor's summons hanging in the air. Anita watched the unfolding scene with a mixture of surprise and curiosity. Axion, sensing the urgency of the situation, pulled her closer and said, His Majesty seems to be insistent. Anita looked at him reassuringly. It's all right. Go ahead. I'll wait for you. With a gentle squeeze, Axion released her hand and said, I'll be back soon. Anita smiled in response as Axion departed, leaving her standing alone amid the murmuring crowd. The whispers and glances directed her way made her feel slightly self-conscious, but she maintained her composure, scanning the room. Among the guests, Anita noticed Arabella, who appeared very nervous. Her unease was palpable, and it didn't take long for the situation to escalate. A man nearby noticed Arabella's distress and loudly commented, The younger Miss Renard must be so embarrassed. Arabella, clearly confused and trembling, accidentally dropped her glass of drink, causing it to shatter on the floor. The man seized the opportunity to escalate the situation, shouting, How will you make up for this? Arabella, frightened and on the verge of tears, stammered, I am sore dash. Anita, observing the distressing scene, quickly walked over to intervene. Her sudden presence surprised Arabella, who looked at her with a mixture of relief and confusion. The man, recognizing Anita, hesitated and stammered, And Miss Renard? Anita stood firmly in front of him, her eyes blazing with anger. Go ahead. Keep going, she said furiously, daring him to continue his harassment. The man was visibly frightened upon seeing Anita there, and he stammered, And Miss Renard? Furious, Anita responded sharply, Go ahead. Keep going. The man tried to murmur something, but no words came out. Anita looked at him with a fierce glare and thought to herself, How pathetic of him to raise his hand over a few drops of wine. Struggling to find his voice and after a brief moment of thought, the man attempted to explain. Miss Renard, you have no idea what that woman did to. Interrupting him with a twitch of anger, Anita demanded, That woman? In a swift movement, Anita snatched a folded hand fan from someone nearby and slapped the man with it. He gritted his teeth and exclaimed, You have no idea what your older sister did to me. Holding the hand fan firmly, Anita listened intently. Gazing at him, she repeated his words. What she did to you? She glanced at his collar, which was stained with alcohol, and remarked dismissively, That's nothing. The man huffed in frustration and asked, So you were aware of what she did and still believed I was in the wrong? Anita replied with a steely calm, Well, either Arabella's hand slipped, or you bumped into her. She demanded an apology for Arabella and said, More importantly, I believe you should be apologizing. The man angrily retorted, For what? Anita glared at him and asked, Why should I have to look up at you? The man stood there, contemplating, and then reluctantly bowed to apologize. Anita commanded, Lower. He remained in the same position, prompting Anita to repeat with an intense glare, Lower. Frustrated, the man said, How am I supposed to bow any lower? Anita interrupted, Mr. Linnet, was it? Did someone pay you to do this? Mr. Linnet glared at Anita, flinched, and replied, Oh, it must be because of your gambling debts. I don't believe anybody is helping you out anymore. Mr. Linnet clenched his fist and defensively asked, If you are referring to my hand, these scars are just from practicing my instrument. Anita, still glaring, responded, Don't you know you're nothing but a pawn to be discarded? If you wish to be forgiven, get on your knees. Mr. Linnet hesitated, the tension palpable as he struggled with his pride and the gravity of Anita's words. Arabella watched the unfolding scene with a look of confusion. Mr. Linnet hesitated for a moment before slowly getting on his knees and saying, Miss Renard. Anita turned sharply when she heard a voice exclaim, What on earth are you doing? She looked over and thought to herself. There he is, just in time. The man who had spoken was the one the Marchioness had asked to escort Arabella today. He approached quickly and added, "He's one of our cousins." This man was Marquis Euclid. Looking at him, Anita pondered. Why was he just watching this whole time? After a moment of reflection, Anita addressed Marquis Euclid directly. While you may be all right with turning your back on a family member, I cannot allow such a thing. Marquis Euclid responded. Excuse me? Arabella hesitantly approached Anita and said, Hey Anita, I'm fine. Marquis Euclid retorted. It's not as though you consider Miss Arabella to be your family anyway. Anita glared at him, her protective instincts flaring. She thought, what he's about to say before he takes Arabella away is obvious. So now seems like the appropriate time to say this. Grasping Arabella's wrist, Anita declared firmly, Of course, I would look out for her. Pulling Arabella closer and smiling, she added, She is my sister, after all. Marquis Euclid was rendered speechless, and everyone standing there was taken aback. Arabella, too, looked at Anita with surprise. Holding Arabella's arm, Anita began moving toward the door. They both sat down on chairs around the table on the balcony. The evening air was cool, and the quiet atmosphere provided a stark contrast to the earlier confrontation. Anita turned to Arabella and asked, Did Grand Marchioness Euclid chaperone you today? Arabella replied, She did. Arabella then looked at Anita with a mix of emotions and asked, Having an older sister like me must be embarrassing for you. Anita smiled gently and said, Oh, I know you just called me that for everybody else to hear. Fidgeting nervously, Arabella continued, Up until a year ago, I would get chased away from shops just for looking at dresses like this. Tears began to well up in her eyes as she spoke. I haven't changed at all since then, but everything else has. You went to social gatherings since you were young, but I'm already 19 and terrible at this. Arabella sniffed while saying, I'm sure you've never made mistakes like this. Anita replied gently, I did. Arabella looked at her in surprise. What? I did. I have made mistakes like that, Anita affirmed. Looking at Arabella, Anita continued, Young noble ladies usually start practicing social etiquette by having afternoon tea with other girls their age. Arabella, sitting nervously, responded, It's rare to start with a ball like this. Mother and father were being too hasty. Tears continued to drip down her face as Arabella whimpered. I couldn't even say anything earlier. I just stared at the ground. Anita reached out, placing a comforting hand on Arabella's shoulder. The pathetic one here was that young nobleman who insulted you. Arabella replied, But I accomplished nothing today. I was introduced to other ladies my age but couldn't even properly greet them. I'm an embarrassment to our family. Anita asked politely, The young noblewomen you were introduced to, were they Miss Disalanta, Miss Savi, and Miss Whedon? Arabella looked surprised and asked, How did you know? Anita sighed. You're not the only one who finds them intimidating. It could have been much worse. She solaced Arabella and said, Don't think you're an embarrassment. Seeing Arabella's scared and confused expression, Anita continued, You're a Renard too, you know. Anita looked at Arabella and mused to herself. I knew she would try to gain control of the Renards. She may have the same title, but the Renards have a much higher status. Besides, she was a Renard for a long time, so the chance must have been irresistible. Anita gritted her teeth with anger and mused. She must have seen this as the perfect time to strike now that Arabella, who knows nothing, has shown up. Addressing Arabella, Anita said, You couldn't have avoided something that was planned out from the start. Arabella stammered. Planned? By whom? Remembering a certain lady, Anita thought to herself. She was planning to appear like a savior and help Arabella after pushing her into a bind. Did she think that would keep Arabella from ever questioning her? Recalling Marchioness Euclid, Anita realized. Grand Marchioness Euclid knew about the Renard family's oldest daughter. Smiling at Arabella, Anita replied, "Our aunt on father's side." Arabella murmured, "Why you mean?" Anita interrupted and said firmly, "That's right. The Euclid family was behind this." Arabella listened carefully and said, "I should be careful then. Marquis Euclid is the one escorting me tonight too." Anita suddenly asked, "By the way, are you just going to believe everything I tell you?" "Why? Because I'm your sister?" Arabella replied, "Well, I guess there's that, but—" She looked at Anita and continued, "Even if you weren't my sister, I would believe you." Anita was taken aback by her answer. Arabella continued, "Admittedly, hearing my old family was doing just fine without me made me a little sad. I think it's more so because I had to hear it from mother and father. Apparently, seeing me in person is burdensome." Hearing this, Anita pondered. That's how they must have stopped her from going to see her old family again. Arabella said, "These days, I keep imagining how different things could have been. If we had grown up together, I could have been more like you." She beamed with joy, adding, "We would have had tea and gone shopping together. Even our tastes could have also been similar. It's nice to think about." Arabella looked towards Anita, smiling, and asked, "Have you also imagined such things before?" Anita was silent as she listened to Arabella. She was thinking for a reply.